Hey, Copium. Excuse me. Welcome in, people. How you doing? Hello. Hello. Welcome, Bettina and Derek Armstrong. Oh, wow. Quick guest request. All right, Derek. I see you in the queue. You'll be first. I want to get the chat going a little bit. Let's talk about your beliefs a little bit. Chat. Let's get the chat cooking. Aura the Evinkian. That's an interesting name. Aura the Evinkian. Cliff D. Welcome in. Ryan and Heather. Noah, welcome in. I think I remember Noah from before. Maybe it's a different Noah, though. Apple user, 85366. Mama Saber. Welcome in, Shelby Bailey. Elifer Dewey. Desmond Zytek, welcome in. How's everybody doing? Happy Wednesday. Buddy Christ. I like that. Mara Moore, the Emperor. Wait a minute. Mixoplix. Wait a second. Oh, I love that name. Mixoplix. Mixieplix. Mixieplix. To know where you stand with God. Refuse spiritual help in motion and prejudice. Refuse spiritual help in motion and prejudice. I don't quite know what that means, Mixieplix. All right, we got two guests in the queue. Theophilus is second, Derek Armstrong is first, and then Dark Matter is third. Let's get the chat going a little bit. What do you guys share some details? One day I realized where you're born, how you're raised, and taught mostly depicts your beliefs. So, number 2, family culture. Is that what you're saying, user? That has a big influence on your beliefs? I might be inclined to agree with that. Sent 3,500 likes. Copium. My goodness. Thank you so much. Billy Borden Milkbones, welcome back. It's good to see you again. Don't be a prisoner to yourself. Why do you ask? Are you sincerely asking? Yeah, I'm sincerely asking. I'm curious. Wrong fishing. It's not a trap. Yeah, if you see my other videos, you'll see I don't trap people. But if I do, I let them out. It's like the little finger traps you got as a kid in the vending machines. It's like that. Really easy to get out of, and it's mostly for fun. But nothing serious. Not here to embarrass or humiliate people. For example, there are 2 billion in India, 80% Hindu. That's a good point. Very good point. Me and my girlfriend are both non-believers, but when we're together, she yells to the heaven, Aaron. Oh, naughty, Aaron. Okay, don't everybody skip that one. This is a family live. It's all ages live. I gotta make the For You page. Oh, but that's funny, Aaron. I like that. But faith makes it true to me. I pray you have a change of heart. You know what? That I really respect that, Michael. And so let me ask you, Michael. There are people who are faithful in Hinduism and Muslim in Islam. Does that make it true for them too? And are there different truths? Okay, just asking. Yeah. That's a fair question, Gone Fishing. Because, people may have not so good intentions. I don't know what I believe. I just hope I see my dog again oh, Joe, you must have had a really sweet dog. And that's a very sweet sentiment. I hope you see your dog again too someday. I've experienced things by believing. Yeah, I think a lot of people have, that there's that saying, seeing is believing. Thank you, Buddy Christ. Appreciate the follow. Hey, we're almost at 1,000 likes. Let's get to 1,000 likes. That's 288 more, and I'll bring up my first guest, which is Derek Armstrong. Imad Dalia is 4th. So what did I say the order? It was Derek Armstrong, Theophilus, Dark Matter, and then Emad Dahlia. We're almost at 1,000 likes. Thank you guys for the likes. And the reason I do the likes and I, promote the chat is it helps the algorithm. So you guys can see my smiling face more often. Important things to worry about. That if God is indeed real, he wouldn't care about the LGBT community because there are more important things to worry about. I don't know how to take that, Sebastian. That's interesting. All right. Okay. Thank you guys. Okay. The real one for life. I think you're number 5 on the list. Okay. Let's start with Derek Armstrong. Yeah, this is a lunchtime thing, so I want to kind of keep it moving. How you doing, Derek?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, pretty good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. And
Good.
just a fair warning, I'm at work right now, so if I have to go abruptly, I'm on break, but sometimes I can get an alarm or my operator will call me. So if I do leave, I do apologize. It'll be pretty
No, no
abruptly.
worries. Okay. Well, I'm at work too. I'm on my lunch break, so yeah, we'll try to keep it moving. Right on.
Yeah. All right. Is it a pretty open conversation? Are you good with the back
Absolutely.
and forth?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Your belief is in atheism, correct?
Yeah. And I would categorize atheism as a lack of belief. So however you want to take that. I mean, you can say I believe in no God, but I can say I don't believe in a God. I don't think there's a huge distinction. So
Okay, so would it be okay if I say that your belief is in atheism because you don't believe there's a God, so that's a belief?
Sure.
Okay, so can I ask you what led you to having faith in atheism without any proof?
Yes. That's kind of a loaded question, honestly, but I'll answer it in good faith. How about that?
Yeah.
It feels, let me say, it feels like a loaded question. So don't want to be
I didn't
accusatory,
mean it
but
to be loaded, I guess.
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Sorry if it came off that way. I guess if you could answer it and maybe
okay.
help me understand your position.
Sure, not a problem. The thing for me is that the more I read, talked with people, absorbed the information, and not just, it was a bunch of faiths, a bunch of different religions. The less everything made sense to me. And so I guess if you could say, if we split hairs on what faith means, because honestly, it means a lot of different things to different people. But we can use your words. That's fine. Faith, having faith in no God. I can't tell you for sure. I'm not 100% convinced there's no God. I'm about 5% confident that there is a God. Whereas somebody who does believe in God may be, 90, 80, 90, 95, 100% convinced. So I'm just on the opposite end. But there are a lot of unanswered questions in our world. And so I cannot absolutely rule out the possibility of there being no God.
Right. And now, okay. And so you probably take the stance as, I'm just kind of generalizing here, but correct me if I'm wrong, the scientific route of the creation of all of like the whole universe, like the Big Bang Theory. Is that kind of what you believe in?
Yeah. Now, in my book, there is a bit of a misconception of the Big Bang Theory. Everybody takes it as, now from what I've read, it's not the beginning of everything. There is a possibility that the universe is eternal, and that the Big Bang was an event within the universe that created all the objects within the universe. There is that theory. So, so in that sense, it's possible that the universe is eternal. I've also looked at it. So there's the empirical scientific perspective, if you want to put it that way. I've looked at it from the ontological perspective. I've looked at it from the teleological perspective. I've looked at it from all different types of perspectives, and none of them hold water as far as existence of a creator.
Okay, so with your logic on this question I'm about to ask you, what is your gut feeling with your answer when I ask this question?
Yeah.
Do you think it's more logical that everything was created by nothing? Or do you think that everything was created by a creator? What seems more logical?
In the framework of that specific question with those specific words, I would say it's more logical that everything was created by a creator. However, the question
So
is
right there, you're already leaning towards the belief that there's a God with your own answer.
Well, let's define what God means. So, like to you, what does God mean?
The creator of all things.
Creator of all things. And so what other properties?
He's eternal. We can't really understand eternity because we die.
Right.
And we know what it means, but I don't think we could actually truly understand how deep that goes. But yeah, God is eternal, and that's my pretty simple answer there.
Okay, so creator and eternal, that's the two properties you've identified so far. Are there any other properties about God that this God has to have?
He's all light and all love.
All light and all love. Okay.
Yep.
Is it a requirement that a God has to have all light and all love in order to be a creator and be eternal?
I've never been asked that question. I would imagine because the God that I believe in is definitely all love and light, so I'm going to have to go off of what the scriptures say. So in my belief, that would be a yes. But what makes you ask that?
The reason I ask that is if it's possible that a creator can just be eternal without having the properties of all light and all love, then I guess if you want to call that God, well, then technically I could believe in God. Like who's to say that the universe
experienced love?
Oh, of course. Absolutely. Every day.
How do you explain love if you don't believe in a loving God?
How do I explain love if I don't believe in a God?
Yeah.
Let me see. I don't quite understand the question, but because I'm not sure if I don't believe in God, I don't know how that relates to how do I explain love. I mean, I can explain love without believing in God. I guess I can answer it that way. So I explain love by, there's several different ways to explain it. It's a feeling of deep caring for another individual or another, it could be an animal, so I'd say a sentient being. It's deep caring for the welfare and concern of that sentient being. And also that causes me to express outward affection towards that sentient being. To demonstrate to that sentient being that I care for them and that I value them as I value their existence, and that I want them in my presence as much as possible. So that takes different forms. Like for example, for my wife, that love is expressed more romantically. For my children, that love is expressed more familially.
Would you die for your wife and your kids?
Yes, I would. I would unalive for them. Yes, absolutely, without question.
What if I told you there is a God who just explained everything that you said, you wrote down in a book on what love is, and you just explained it without knowing that God? Would you want to read more about that God and learn about him?
Based on that, now assuming I knew nothing of this, let's just say I was an alien coming from another civilization, from another world, and you said this to me, I would want to read more on it. But as I stand here as Trust But Verify, talking to Derek Armstrong, I would say, well, I've already read about that, so I would ask you to demonstrate that to be true.
Demonstrate it as in you want proof?
Correct. Whatever proof means to you. I think the word proof means a lot to a lot of people.
Creation is proof, right?
I don't make that assumption. No, I don't think proof is creation. I don't think creation is proof. No, in my book.
Okay,
no.
Even though you just said, okay, so that's not proof. All right. what if there's a God that says if you want proof, then you're not going to understand, because the one way to understand is by having faith. You can't have proof and faith at the same time. So if that God said, I can't, if you don't believe in my creation and rainbows and butterflies and kids and a loving wife, if that's not enough for you, he does say if he does give you more proof, you still won't believe.
Yeah. So I'll answer, and then I have a question for you. All right.
Yeah.
So my answer would be I picked the proof. So my question to you would be that there are folks who believe in other religions. Like, for example, they 100% convinced that Hinduism is true, and they rely on their faith for that confidence. So does that faith in Hinduism make Hinduism true?
I would say no, because we know when it comes to ultimate truths in any subject, there's only one truth in any subject. There's only one truth. There can't be two truths. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. So then is faith a reliable way to determine that something is true?
Is faith a reliable way to see if something's true? I would say yes.
Well, so then if it's yes, then how did the Hindus get it wrong? Because if they're using faith to determine that their faith is true, yet you're saying that it's a reliable way to determine it's true, then where did they go awry?
Along with any other faith that is wrong, like atheism, that I believe in all the Hindu and all the different denominations. How do we know what one's true, right?
Right. So it's other pieces of evidence? Is that what you're saying?
There is evidence with one religion that I'm talking about that has eyewitnesses that recorded everything of what they saw. And if you compare that with the prophecies that were written down hundreds of years before the events actually happened, there's a way to prove that Yeshua, Jesus, people call him, I use his Hebrew name, Yeshua, that all of everything he did is a fact, and it's not really faith if you believe the scriptures. Now, obviously, we got to believe that these all the different people who wrote down what they saw, we have to believe that. But just like in a court of law, if you have an eyewitness or a testimony and they write down what they saw, that's good enough for a witness in a court case. Yeah. But now, when it comes to God, a lot of people don't like the Gospels of what was written down. They act like it was just a fairy tale, but it can be dated back all the way to the original writings.
Yeah. Let's explore that for a second, if we can. The evidence thing, because I will say that because I used to be a philosophy of religion major at one time, and I was about to go into the seminary at one time. So based on what I've learned, based on what I've read, when I was going that route, and it still holds, because that was a long time ago. I'm dating myself, but that was a long time ago. But even up to today, there are a majority of philosophy of religion scholars who don't deny the existence of a person named Jesus. So it's reasonable to conclude that a person existed, walked the earth.
And we built our whole timeline around them. BC, AD, that's kind of amazing, I thought. Yeah.
I mean, it's changed. It used to be that. Now it's changed to BCE and CE. So it's kind of changed now. But yeah, and people still use the BC, AD, and like there's people like me that if you use that, I would know what you mean. But then there are a generation of people who wouldn't know what you mean. So yeah, it depends. But yeah, I'll go with you on that too.
I guess the question comes down to, when it comes to what I believe in, which is Yeshua, who is God the Father, who actually came and took on flesh. And really, no one disputes that he was alive. And we have the eyewitnesses and the writings of what he did, the miracles, like thousands and thousands of miracles. Why is the eyewitnesses that have been documented and kept throughout the centuries not enough proof for you?
Well, here's why. And this is what I was about to get into. So are you aware of the distinction between eyewitness testimony and hearsay testimony.
Yeah.
Okay. So would it be, so then how would we distinguish it? And please, I'd like you to, I'm asking you for the benefit of the chat, not
Okay.
to like rope you into a corner or anything like that.
You're good.
Because there's at least one person in chat who doesn't know this, and so it's easier if I have you explain it to me. Okay. Can you give us a distinction, like just explain the distinction between the two?
Okay, so I would imagine eyewitness is someone who was right there and saw the events happen.
Right.
And someone hearsay could have just been someone from a different town that heard about it, but they actually weren't an eyewitness, and that judge wouldn't let that hearsay witness in the court of law because they weren't even there.
Right. Okay. So if let's just say we were to, like we were in a court of law. Let's just say for argument's sake, we were in a court of law and we were litigating whether or not Jesus performed these miracles. Okay. And so the eyewitnesses that you would bring up, how many eyewitnesses? You said that there were a bunch of eyewitnesses who saw thousands of these miracles happen, right?
Right.
Now, who were the eyewitnesses who actually documented it, like the direct eyewitnesses?
The apostles.
All of them? All 12?
Yeah. I would believe that Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. I'm not sure. I'd have to polish up on some of the other apostles. I don't know if everyone walked with Jesus. I'm not sure if Paul did, and some of those other ones. But the main ones, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and the other ones that were with them. So
that sounds like 4 so far, right? We have 4.
Okay, there's more. I can't remember all the apostles' names. But go ahead with those 4.
Okay, and what I'm asking is, like, who are the ones who actually wrote down what they saw? And so it sounds like there's 4 so far. So did the other 8 actually write something down and say, hey, I saw this?
Peter, Timothy, Peter, that's a couple that I just remembered. So there's 6, and I think there's a few more. But we got 6 so far. Go ahead. What's your question on that?
And then do we want to include Paul in that too? I mean, he wasn't an original apostle, but he did.
Okay, if you want to, that's fine.
Yeah, in his letters, he did an eyewitness to, say, I directly saw Jesus, or did he see God? It's hard to remember if it's actually who it was, but we'll just say Yeshua. How about that? So we'll throw Paul into the mix. Okay. So, but then the rest of them who didn't write anything down, but
like all the Romans and the Jews and the Pharisees.
Yeah, like the Romans, the Jews, the Pharisees, but they didn't write anything down. They have their own
Bibles too that talk about Jesus. The Pharisees have their what do you call that? The Torah.
But I'm asking about the ones who actually witnessed Jesus making miracles.
Okay. Right. Okay.
That's who. And I'm asking, out of those people who physically, literally witnessed Jesus performing miracles, we so far we have 6 or 7. Excuse me. We have 7. We have 7 who directly saw something and who physically, literally wrote it down. Right. But the rest of them, like you said, the Romans, the Pharisees, they didn't write that. Hey, I saw Jesus do this on this. Like, I saw Jesus do this. I directly saw Jesus do this. So how do we know that they saw this? And what I mean by that, not like were we there? Yeah. It was documented that they saw this. That's what I meant. I didn't mean to say, when I meant to say how do we know, I meant to say how did we gain information that they saw this?
Well, I guess because of all the right. Okay, so have you read the Gospels full all throughout?
Well, let's see. I've read that. I read it in the. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? It looks like your signal's going bad. I can see that.
Oh, sorry, my phone must have cut out.
Okay. I was going to say. Now. Okay. Well, I've read it in the Catholic Bible and the Protestant-based Bible, so 73-book Bible, 66-book Bible, and then the different versions of the 66 Bible, like the NKJV, the KJV, the ESV, the NIV, et cetera, and then I've read the American Standard Version and the Catholic Bible. It could be, but I've read several different versions of them. So yeah, and I've read the Gospel, front to back. So I don't remember it off the top of my head. I haven't memorized it, but I've read it multiple times. So I'm at least familiar with most of the details. Yeah, at least. So, okay. So from what I recall, here I'll speed it up a little bit. I'll try to get to what I'm saying. From what I recall, that there was secondhand testimony of, hey, this person saw this. So it wasn't firsthand. When I mean firsthand, it wasn't that person directly wrote in the gospel, I saw this. But there were lots of writings in the gospel of...
Who are you talking about that saw it secondhand?
The Romans, like, for example, the Roman centurion whose servant was resurrected. Is that a story? Is that a story, if I recall? I don't know if it was a servant,
but who wrote the book of Romans?
That would have been, was it Paul wrote that? It was a letter to the Romans, right?
Yeah. So Paul wrote that, not the Romans. So that's still firsthand.
No, well, you had said that Romans had directly witnessed this. So my example was the Roman centurion who had directly witnessed a miracle from Jesus.
You're right.
Yeah. So but that Roman centurion did not write something that said, I witnessed this. It was a secondhand account, right?
Correct.
So now, in that sense, would would something like that be considered hearsay?
It depends on how you frame the question, I guess, because were there witnesses who saw the guy's son or daughter, I can't remember, dying? And if that's true, that they were on their deathbed and then all of a sudden they're perfectly fine, I would say that's pretty good proof that was not hearsay and that it really did happen.
Yeah, I'm asking if the people who were present at that event, if they're the ones who directly documented this, or did they just, are they retelling? Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm asking. So then, according to your definition, they weren't an eyewitness. That means that's hearsay testimony.
Right.
So are we clear on that?
The 7 that we got that are our eyewitnesses.
Yeah, and I'm getting to that in a second. I'm just trying to make the distinction here. Okay. So what I'm saying then, and so what I'm saying then is that assuming that they were eyewitnesses, now we have to say, okay, now did they actually write this? And going from what I have learned, from what I have studied, there are discrepancies on whether, for example, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John actually were the people who wrote those. So I'm going by what I read and what I studied. The philosophy of religion scholars that you will, if you just do a survey of them. Well, let me finish, and then I'll let you ask. That there is discrepancies and there is debate amongst who actually wrote those 4 gospels. So to me, I would have to cross all of those off the list because we can't really know for sure. So then that leaves Paul, Timothy, and Peter. Okay, now what were you going to ask?
Okay, real quick on that, 2 things. What were the discrepancies? And then the second thing is, are you using this same argument towards your own belief with atheists? Because you got no witnesses, you got no writings, and you got no proof.
Well, I never said there were no witnesses, no writings, no proof, because I did grant you. I'm about to grant you those in a minute. I was kind of taking you through what my thought process is here. So we started with 7, and I just eliminated 4. And the reason I eliminated the 4 is because these scholars who study this all the time, who have way more hours in studying all these manuscripts, all these Bibles, all this data, comparing it to historical accounts.
What scholar?
There's tons of them, and I'll let you look that up. So it's easily found on Google. You can easily find this.
You trust those scholars? You trust them?
Well, I trust them in the same way that you trust all the amount of witnesses that you say there are there. So these are scholars that I do trust, and here's another reason why I trust them. The reason why I trust them is because if you look at the diaspora of this, hold on, it's a diaspora of scholars, okay, who if you look at their religious affiliations, these religious scholars, the majority of them are Christian, okay, and it actually falls along the lines of the world religions. So the largest percentage of them are Christians, and then there are Muslims, there are Hindus, there are all the different faiths. There are Buddhists, there are Sikhs, there are etc. I can go right on down the line, and the percentage of them roughly coincide with the world percentages of religions. So when you look at that, and if the majority of them are saying that there is a discrepancy, if they can't all agree on who wrote these, and if you're looking at the Christian religious philosophy of religion scholars and they can't agree on who wrote the four gospels, then that tells me, that calls into question, you can't really say for sure Matthew wrote the gospel, Mark wrote his gospel, Luke and John wrote their gospels. You can't really say that. So that means that we have to cross them. Again, I'll let you look that up because you and I don't have a lot of time here, so we can't really get into that. But it's easily found. You can easily find this stuff. Okay?
I don't think you can cross it out unless we do a little bit more digging into that.
Okay, well, then in that case, what I would ask, so again, if we're in a court of law, then I would ask you to provide me evidence, to provide the court evidence on how you know Matthew wrote the Gospel of Matthew. What evidence you would provide, how the evidence, and right on down the floor. I would ask for that evidence.
Okay, so actually written sworn testimony wouldn't count in the court of law?
Written sworn testimony from each of these individual people?
From the eyewitnesses that were there?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we're litigating this, 2,000 plus years after. So of course, we can't have those people, do that. So I see what you're saying, though. So if it says here, but what I'm saying is I would present counter evidence that shows, for example, that multiple people wrote the gospel of, one of these gospels. That there's discrepancies in the writing styles, etc. There's evidence that shows that some things were added later and in a different writing style and all of those things. So I would present evidence like that. So I would call into question the sworn testimony. So that's what I mean.
Okay, let's just go to, and then I'll let the next guest come up, but I just want to ask one last question to kind of see what you say on this. What is it about the teachings of Jesus that you disagree with, there's just no way you could follow a guy who says to love your enemies, to love me with all your heart, mind, and soul, to love your neighbors? What is it about Jesus that would block you from putting your faith in him?
I don't think that there's a lot I don't disagree with. I'd say 99% of it I agree with. I would say that the issues with that are...
What's the hang up?
Let's see. I mean, there would be something to the effect of, Jesus advising the servant to obey their master. I don't agree with that at all. So that'd be part of the 1%. That would be a big. That would be a big deal breaker for me. What's that? I didn't hear that last question.
Atheism by following its belief and saying, are you obeying atheism?
Well, there is no obeying atheism because it's just a lack of belief. There's nothing to obey. And I have one question before you go.
Well, what that is though, yeah.
So, but go ahead. Say what you're going to say, and then I'll ask you a question, and then we can be done.
Oh, I was going to say, when it comes to if you look at what you could have, if it is true, if Jesus is God in the flesh, the Father in the flesh who saved us, and he actually died for you. He came to die for you and all the other sinners. We're all sinners. And if you just put your faith in him and it's a free gift and you really mean it, you get to have eternal life. You could tell your family about it. They could have eternal life in paradise. But if you're wrong, if you're right, we just die and that's nothing. So wouldn't you want to put all your eggs in the basket of eternal life and with a loving God who says to love everybody, rather than the atheist side where there is no proof of it because you can't prove that there's nothing when we're all here, and that you just end up into darkness and you don't exist anymore. But if I'm right, you get to go to heaven, and the people who deny him, they chose to not go to heaven. So, all right, you could live in eternity in the lake of fire. Now, just logically speaking, don't you think you would want to, hey, just in case, family, we should probably look into this Jesus guy and really earnestly seek him, because the Bible does say only those who seek me with all their heart, mind, and soul will find me. And I don't think a lot of people actually do that. And I'm talking all the church people. Not a lot of people earnestly seek him. So that's kind of the question I would give to you. Like, don't you think it's worth it just in case? Because if you're wrong, you're going to hell. But if you're right, you're going to nothing, blackness. So it's like a lose-lose situation for being an atheist.
Okay. So let me respond this way. So there are approximately 4,000 religions in the entire world. All right. And all of them have different ways of getting to eternal life. And so we are back to the question of, well, how do we demonstrate which one is true? Like, for example, for Hindus, there are different ways to experience their type of eternal life. So if I'm hearing what you're saying, and you're saying, well, this is how you get to eternal life on Yeshua's terms, and the Hindu is saying, well, this is how you get to eternal life on, Vishnu's terms, for example. So how do I determine who's telling the truth?
Because we know there's only one that came back from the dead. All those other religions, they didn't have anybody that did that. There's no eyewitnesses. They didn't write it down. And even if they had eyewitnesses, you would, like, most people who don't believe in the scriptures wouldn't even believe their religion either. But we have one with the written testimonies and all the prophecies, by the way. Like 2017 was one of the latest prophecies that came true, the Revelation 12 sign. You can look into that. It's pretty amazing. That's what kind of got me like, oh my gosh, I really need to get my life together, because I believe we're in Revelations right now and people don't even realize it.
I see. So if there were Hindus who gave me saying, hey, we had all these prophecies in our religion, and look at all the ones that have come true. And also, number one, so again, how do I determine which one's true? Because if you're saying your prophecies became true and they're saying their prophecies came true, then how do I figure out which ones are the right prophecies? Number one. And then number two, how can you demonstrate that just because a religion has the only resurrection event that we can't verify as true? Number one. And number two, how do you know that is the way to eternal life? Just because it says it in the Bible. What if that's not the true way to eternal life? Believing in that. What if it's tapping into the singular consciousness like Hinduism? And so which would make you wrong, which means that if Hinduism is true, then you don't experience eternal life. So how do we figure that out?
Well, it comes down to faith, and that's the hard part for people. They don't have it. It comes down to faith, and that's
right.
Really the key thing is faith. But a lot of people want proof. My biggest one, I'll end it with this, is if you really, really want to know, I promise you this: if you by yourself go sit down and pray to Yeshua, who I can tell you this, but you're not going to probably believe me. I know he's real because of what happened in my life, what changed. I was addicted to some really bad stuff, and I loved it. And I prayed about it, and I prayed about it, and it took years. And it finally, something clicked, and it gave me strength inside. I can't really explain it, except it was what kind of like what the scriptures talk about. When you really seek me, you'll find me, and I'll fill you with my Holy Spirit.
That's awesome to hear.
I could tell you that it really happened to me. Yeah,
that's awesome to hear.
And I
awesome to
pray
hear.
for these. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And one question before you go.
Do an honest prayer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, I want to say from someone, my sobriety date is February 13th of 2013. So from one person to another who's been down that road, congratulations. I'm honestly elated to hear that. That's amazing. So it'll be 12 years for me. So my last question to you is, why ought someone, thank you. Why ought someone obey God? That's my last question to you. Why ought somebody obey God?
Because you love him, just like you love your parents and you obey your parents.
Because we love them and we obey our parents. Okay.
Just like with your parents, kids, they follow and listen to their parents. Just like your God, your Father created us. I'm going to listen to God. I don't want to not listen to my Father. Yeah.
Okay. And
if your God tells you to love, if your God tells you, your Father tells you, hey, love everybody, don't pick on people, love your enemies, I would obey that. Like, I don't know who would want to not obey that. You know what I mean?
Now, my father died in 1988, and so so in that scenario, if he's not physically here, like in my presence, how would I still obey my father if he's no longer in my presence?
Okay, so who raised you?
My mother and father.
Would you obey your mother when she told you to do something because you loved her? Did you obey her?
Yeah, back then. But I mean, if she told me to brush my teeth and go to bed at 8:30 now, I probably wouldn't obey her. You know, she's 84 now. She probably would try to
we gotta ask for
do that for
Sorry,
me.
Mom, right?
But I probably would say, no, Mom, I got some work to do.
We ask for forgiveness. Yeah, we always have work to do. Even I do. Even a Christian me, we always have work to do. And we screw up. We just ask for forgiveness. And guess what? He says, you're forgiven. I love you. And it's a sweet experience. And I truly hope that you pray about it when you have a little bit of time. Just ask, Lord, I've been doing this for a while. Just if you are the truth, Yeshua, Jesus, please show me. I really want to know. And I believe he will show you.
Do you want to do that now? We can do it right now if you want.
Do you want to say a prayer?
Sure. I'll let you lead it. And I will sincerely try to do what you say.
Okay.
So tell me how to do this. So I'm doing it exactly how you say it.
You just, you know what it is? It's just comes out of your heart, but I'll do a prayer with you. And then I want you, out of your heart, with your own words, pray for him to show you the truth. There's only one truth.
Okay.
So, let's bow our heads and say, Heavenly Father, I really enjoyed that you led me to this brother who is just curious for what the true way is. There's one truth, and there's so many deceiving messages out there that it's hard to find the truth. But your word says if we call on you, Yeshua, if we call on you with a genuine heart, and we really want to know the truth, you say that you will make yourself known. So, Lord, I pray that when he does this, you will come into his heart and let him feel the love that you give us, and you will show him the true way. And then when he feels that and he notices it, that he'll be a disciple and show others the true way. Because that's what it's ultimately about, is to love all of our enemies, all of our friends, all of our family. And if you could just give him the strength to find the truth, I pray this in your name, Yeshua. Amen.
Okay. Thanks for that.
I appreciate it, man. Hey, God bless you, and I appreciate everything we talked about. And I'm going to add you, actually follow you. And I had a great conversation with you, buddy.
Yeah, it was a good conversation, man. Yeah. Come on back, and we'll see what happens.
All right, I'm curious. I'll stay in touch.
Right on. All right. Take care. Have a good one.
All right, bye.
All right. Yeah, that was a good combo. And, it was I can say that potentially it could have gone like the debate route. We could have like gone that route and we could have, talked past each other. And I think that, he made a lot of good points. And, I think that, he did make some good points. But honestly, I've heard these all before and, not entirely compelling, but it was a good conversation nonetheless. So, but we'll see if the prayer works. I mean, I'm 5% confident God exists, so I can't rule it out. So I'm as sincere as I can be with this. So, and I really, try to do what he asked me to do, and I was sincerely listening to his words. So, he said to take it into your heart, and I was really trying to do that as best as I could. So, oh, thanks, Jonah. I appreciate that. I try to be. I mean, people want to pray for me. I got no problem with that. I mean, look, my mom prays for me every day. She is a devout Catholic. My mom goes to church every day, still lamenting the fact that I didn't go to seminary school. I wish she would have become a priest. She goes to church every day, and she prays for me every day. Every day. So, oh, sorry, Cameron. I don't know what to give to you for that. Okay, looks like some people fell off, so we're at Dark Matter, who is next on the list. And I apologize, I didn't really pay attention to like who came up in order, but we'll go next to Dark Matter. You've been waiting patiently, so I appreciate your patience, Dark Matter. How you doing?
No worries. I'm doing good, sir. First of all, I'm going to say, I've just joined TikTok in the last 3 months, and
yeah.
I'll say this: I've kind of learned a lot. I've talked with a lot of agnostic atheists, and then I've seen a lot of agnostic atheists that were kind of poised, but then let's just say their background's a little darker as anti-atheists. But it's refreshing because I'm going to say something. You're very humble, and you're very well. I'm not that I'm kissing your butt or anything, but you seem very sincere, and I do appreciate that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I try to be as sincere as I can. Yeah, I try to be as sincere as I can. And thanks for the gifter badge, whoever, Backslider. Appreciate that. Yeah, I just try to be as sincere as possible, and and it is coming from a sincere place. I'm genuinely curious as to why people believe what they believe and how they figured out it's true. So you'll see me steer every conversation to that, because that's where I want to be.
I see.
Yeah.
I'll start it this way. My approach is a little different. As
right.
Paul said, you become all things to everyone. And I never address an agnostic or atheist in the same way. I'm not going to throw scriptures or anything. So my background, I've had my fair share of schooling, and have a decent vocabulary. So, and I can tell you do as well. So, but with that,
thanks for the roses, Backslider. Wow, lots of roses. Sorry, I have to acknowledge that. Thank you, Backslider. Appreciate that. Look at all these roses, Backslider. Look at you. Thank you so much. All right.
No
and
worries.
the yay. Thank you. Okay.
I'll start off with this because I'm looking at your backdrop and I could see its stars, which is the immensity of space and so forth. But I'll say this: I'm going to approach it from a scientific, critical thinking science, and then I could talk about anomalies, paranormal, and things of this nature. But I'm not going to go conspiratorial on you or anything like that.
All right.
But, humankind, we only know 13.8 billion years to the singularity or the Big Bang, right? The so-called Big Bang, which essentially is still a theory, but they know through, empathy the cosmic radiation background points to the time that's pretty specific, right? And we don't know 1 millisecond before the Big Bang. We don't know if they call it cyclical, where this keeps repeating, right? The big crunch, right? Then the big bang, we don't know. Those are just theoretical. But what we do know is that 13.8 billion years ago, this universe did have a beginning. That's at least the data set that we do have, right? So as humans, kids ask, why is the sky blue? How do we get here? What is the meaning of life? That kind of stuff, right? So my point in saying this is, at least we know that the universe did have a beginning. There's entropy, which is the decay of basically matter, and which also points to and that's why they say it also points to an origin point, right? My point in saying all this is science really cannot, there's string theory, there's multi-universes, which is theory, which is not proven, it's just theoretical. And if you, for example, if you believe in multi-universes, then the probability of a God becomes even less, right? Look, I'm a realist. I have my fair share of schooling. I call it a 24-pack, 12 years of, regular education and 12 years of what have you, right? So my point is, putting this all together is to say that, and I'm going to call it 0 point. In engineering, there's a plus or minus tolerance. And the 0 point is when you have someone who's atheistic or agnostic, obviously for whatever reason, lack of belief, lack of physical proof, right? And I understand that. It's logical. And I believe it's by design. I don't believe we don't know the day or the hour or the time on purpose. Because if everyone actually factually knew, then we're all going to drop in. Probably, majority. Yeah. So I think and this again, I'm not here to quote scriptures currently, because I'm going to talk, as Paul said, you address people to their mindset, and so to you, I say this: what we do know is the universe did have a beginning. I'm not going to talk about space, time, and matter. We don't know the beginning, but what I will say is the probability of sustaining life is pretty rare. That's why I say I don't string theory, quantum physics is half factual, right? Definitive. The other half is theoretical. Like classical physics, like Newton and Einstein, right? That's definitive, meaning like that's trackable. We know this, like that's definitive. So, and I think you comprehend this because I just listened to you for like about 15, 20 minutes. So my point in saying all this,
that's a big assumption, man. That's a big assumption, Dark Matter.
Go ahead, address that, because that's cool.
No. I was saying it's a big assumption that I comprehend this. What you're saying, that's all I was saying.
What I mean
it's a big. I'm slow, man. That's why I got to ask questions. I am slow.
Well,
yeah.
I listen to your logic, and you seem very sound. So I say that I don't know enough about your background, but I can comprehend in saying that reasonably. But
okay, all right.
My point in saying this, I'll state this. Usually, when I talk to a very staunch atheist or agnostic, I don't quote the Bible whatsoever. I just use basic logic, critical thinking, and look. The bottom line is, science cannot answer anything past the Big Bang. We don't know any answers. They can assert all these theoreticals, right? And we talk about space, time, and matter. How did it get here? And then, talking about, the second law of physics, like matter cannot be created or destroyed in a closed circuit. And it's like, well, then how did matter get here? And I can get really technical now, but, can something come from pure nothing kind of thing? These whole statements that I'm starting to hear, but I'm really into, by the way. But to the point, I'll say this to a very staunch atheist or agnostic. Have you ever, and I don't want to sound conspiratorial or sound strange, but have you ever experienced paranormal in any sense? Or, like I
thought I did.
I don't want to get weird, but I'm just saying.
I thought I did.
Okay, the reason why. Go ahead. I'll let you talk. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say I thought I did. And after kind of turning it over in my mind, it turns out the evidence for that didn't support what I thought I experienced. So gotcha. I'll just put it that way.
Gotcha. Yeah. Understood. And look, it can be inducive hallucinogenics, or it can. I'm going to just say this: the reason why I'm bringing this up, because there's anomalies. When I say anomalies, things are unexplainable. Back in history, right? There's anomalies, but sometimes in the future we'll be able to explain stuff. Like quantum physics has superposition, and we didn't understand any of this. Einstein hated it because he didn't understand it. Right? Einstein's what they call a pantheist. He believed, if you read his words, he said mathematics and the cosmology are so elegant. He believed in his statements, if you read, it's only like 2 paragraphs, but he says, I believe that it's beyond mankind. So he was raised as a Jew, but he was not Jewish at all, right? But he was a pantheist, meaning, some people believe in the Prometheus theory, all this stuff, right? So my point in saying this, he drew his own conclusion. The guy's pretty intelligent. So, I think it's a valid variable to call upon, right? To say, hey, this guy was pretty smart. But his conclusion was he felt that it was self-evident to him that there's something beyond mankind. And then my second point here is talking about paranormal. I mean, just as an example, not to get weird, but like Russia and the United States has spent millions and millions of dollars in what they call, telekinesis, what they call astral projection, and it has had certain, if you look at the research, not to get weird, okay, and that's not my point. I'm not here to talk about that stuff. That's kind of dark stuff. But my point is, it had some ratios beyond coincidence that were not normal, right? And that's kind of not a pun here about paranormal, but it showed something that people were seeing stuff and secret sites and they paid billions of dollars. It's not just the US, but my point is, there's things that are unexplainable. If I can say, hey, is there a spirit world, right? And as an atheist, I can't convince you of that other than to say, what are the probabilities or possibilities? There's things that are unanswerable, right? There's the alchemists of the past, right? There's people, if we brought for example, if we brought a ballpoint pen back in, the 1700s, they're going to think we're a witch and probably like burn us on fire or whatever, right? So my point is, even with quantum physics, for example, superpositioning defies everything we know. That's a particle that can be in multiple locations simultaneously until decided upon. That's a phenomenon we can't even we can only observe it. We can't explain it. It is literally a phenomenon, and there's so many phenomenons. And I'm trying to have the appreciation, and not I'm not going to say the word omnipotent, but that shows humankind for the first time. That shows us a comprehension of that a particle can be in multiple locations at the same time. That's just it. Newton and Einstein hated, and Newton had nothing to do with quantum, but not Darwin. Listen to me. Oh my God, Einstein basically hated. He called it spooky action at a distance because he literally avoided. If you look up his writings on quantum, he hated it because he couldn't explain it, and that's why I'm saying to you. I have my fair share of critical thinking, science, differential equations, physics. My point is my schooling, like right now, I'm a consultant. I work from home and I get to listen to everyone. And for the last 3 months, I've been on TikTok, being able to hear and I've learned a lot. Believe me, I've learned a lot. I've listened to so many different points I would have never, ever thought of. Here's my point. I'll wrap it up. And thank you for hearing me out. But sure, I would say this. This conversation that's happening has transcended thousands of years, right? It will continue for another thousands of years because we cannot prove or disprove God, right? In my opinion, I believe I agree. I believe it's by design, and you may not believe that. I think it's by design because if a physical absolute proof, then everyone's going to jump into the boat, and that's not what he's looking for. He's looking for someone who's going to believe in goodness, want to be, and I think it's well, do I want to say it's a test? I mean, and see, I'm very careful. Like to an atheist, I don't want to talk biblical because it turns them off. Right. Yeah. So I say I do personally. That's not you, but I personally believe it's by design. I believe by design. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'll give you one example. In the 70s, right? When I say 70s, not our 70s, but during Christ's time. The Romans came in and destroyed Jerusalem, right? They had all the historical, they had all the genealogy, they had Jesus, they had everybody, they had that whole thing, every record. And the Romans were really good at records, but so were the Jewish, they had to register every year. They had to travel, go stuff. See, I'm sorry, I'm talking the Bible, sorry, but my point is that stuff was all destroyed and burned to the ground. But if that would have been retained, my goodness. My point is, I believe some of I don't know if you ever read the Bible. Like, honestly, Satan tried to hide Moses' body for some strange reason. And like I said, now I'll try not to refer to that stuff, but there's some interesting things. Like if I mentioned in the Bible, it talks about prediction. There was a woman that Paul and Silas basically took away the demon of divination, and then she couldn't produce any money for her owners. And so basically they flogged the guys, beat the guys, kept them. My point is, that's why I asked about, anomalies, paranormal, because I already know I wasn't always religious, and I didn't have a thing where I was on drugs, so to speak, and I didn't have where I came, and I threw myself at Christ or this or that. I'm not even saying that. My point is I slowly became a believer over the years, and not because of those manners. Like You know, I
Mm-hmm.
had a pretty conservative family. You know, I had to go to school. My parents were on me. I had structure. My parents were very structured. So, and they weren't religious, right? So I've come to my own conclusions on my own. And you know,
Yeah.
right or wrong, I'm going to be either judged or non-judged. And that's what, and I say that to you, not judge, because if he's real, as the last person says, you know, and here, I'll leave it with closing with this. I just believe that there is some anomalies that can be explained, right? We're having these weird things with UFOs in the last 2 years, which is really strange, right?
Mm.
And I personally, I mean, I'm not going to comment on that because that's like, it's going to get weird. But
Okay.
I will say this, and usually when I talk to an atheist, we cannot prove or disprove God. We have to make the decision for ourselves, and that's the obligation of man, to make their choice.
Yeah.
And if I talk about free will, I'm rather going to use free choice, because then we can go about free will and, you know, is everything pre-programmed, predestined, or do we have the variables of making our own decisions, which
Okay.
I think I think there's open variables. We make our decisions. And I think that's because if we were all programmed, then what joy in a Prometheus theory to create something where it's all pre-programmed. If you played a video game and you only observed it, right? There's no interaction. I mean, seriously. I mean, a game has open variables for a purpose, to play, to enjoy, to have a causality, right? Anyway, I'll wrap it up with that. But I appreciate you hearing me. But like I said, I wasn't going to get all scriptural. Like I can, but my point is, I wanted to keep it open to your mindset because you're very respectful.
Oh, thanks.
So I'm going to be
Appreciate
respectful
that.
to you.
Okay. Do you mind if I dig a little bit into like what your beliefs are and kind of unpack that a little bit? Because you did say a lot here. So and I think it would be helpful to me to do that, because then I can kind of tie it all together.
Exactly. You know,
but I have an idea of where you're going. Yeah, but that would be super helpful, because I think for me, the big thing is that I ask these questions and I have these conversations to understand where people are coming from, and then in the hopes that also, and if people want, they can understand where I'm coming from. But that's not a requirement. I don't really care about that. For me, it's really, I want to understand where you're coming from. So I tend to let people do a lot of the talking, and I just listen. And
unusual and very appreciative.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny. A lot of times, what'll happen is when I do let people, you know, explain, like what happened here is that, and so I think it's a testament to what you were saying, because my chat count is still pretty high. It's about where it was when I started. So that's a testament to you.
Cool.
So yeah, so that's a good thing, and I'm just saying that's a good sign. So what I wanted to ask you is, so it sounds like you have a belief in God, and so how would you define that God? Like, what properties would you assign that God that you believe in, or do you believe this God has?
Sure. I'm going to be very open, you know, because usually the questions are, do you believe in the God of Abraham or the Christian God, or, you know, or other kind of gods, or do you believe, like, you know, such as Einstein, right? You know, the pantheism. Just to be, you know, brutally honest, I was atheistic, then pantheist, and then I've kind of closed it in that I do believe in the Christian God.
Okay,
so it didn't start that way. There's a lot of anomalies, and you brought them out because, you know, I don't believe in mainstream religion. I think it's corrupt. I think it's not what it's supposed to be. I mean, the leaders are supposed to serve. They're not supposed to get their rings. They're not supposed to get their hands kissed, right?
Got it.
There's a lot of things like, I mean, should a priest pray for someone on this side of the war, you know, like such as, you know, Ukraine, and should the Orthodox pray for the same thing? I mean, it sounds totally counterproductive. So atheists and Gnostics, I get it. The Crusades, the Inquisition, it's horrible, dude. And so you draw these conclusions that, like, I don't blame where they've drawn their conclusions, because it's corruption, and it brings so much. But to me, I
hear you.
Anyway, hopefully that's helpful.
That's helpful.
My path, but I'll stop. Go ahead. I'll let you.
Okay. And what would you say because you did give me a lot of reasons, but what would you say is your best reason that this Christian God exists, to the point where if it were demonstrated to you, say tomorrow, and you verified that this was accurate, that this God doesn't exist, that you would either seriously it would seriously lower your confidence in the belief of that God, or you would not believe in that God at all. Like if there's one reason that you could pinpoint that would like seriously erode your confidence in God's existence, if it were proven untrue.
Okay, for like, let me see. As an example, like, okay, so like, let's say there's erroneous scriptures, erroneous Bibles. The Gnostics were like 2nd century, 1st century, who came in, interesting stuff, right? Or like, let's just say there was other. Let's just say, for example, it's hypothetical here. I'm talking hypothetical. If there was other scriptures found here in Egypt, right, like the Dead Sea Scroll, and said, "Hey, we found some new stuff," and it was like completely contrary, would that affect me? You know, I'd have to find out the validity. I'd have to find out and do my research to come to my own conclusion. But
let's say you did that and you came to the conclusion, yeah, this is true.
Yeah.
So
see,
what would
at that point? I mean, at that look, I've had critical thinking, you know, which is schooling and on lots of my training growing up in my school. And so, I mean, I'm a reasonable person. Do I put my faith and belief up to what I've come to my own conclusions for at this point? But if something is, you know, there's a point which you're going to fight your logic, right? And sometimes with miracles, you can, like, I'm not even talking that stuff, right? That's why I talked about anomalies. But I hear what you're saying, because can you defy all logic and constantly at every level? I mean, what is the percentage and what is the ratio in which you're going to defy logic, really? Right? Because that's really what you're pointing to. And
so it would be something logical. It would be, is that what I'm hearing? That it would be something logical that would, if you could verify that this logic holds water, this would seriously erode your confidence that a God would exist.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a reasonable person. I mean,
so some type of logic. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, I mean, you could be dogmatic and look at, I mean, if I quote something, nothing can separate you from the word, you know, with heights, depths, or whatever. So I mean, I quote stuff, which, like I said, I'm not even using any of that, but I'm being reasonable to tell you, as a human being, you know, subconscious, conscious, our reasoning, we want to justify our approaches, what it jeopardizes. A paradigm shift, to realize, which is a scary thing. A paradigm shift is to reanalyze yourself and make a reshift in your belief. It's a scary thing, right? Isn't it?
Right.
I mean, really, to be honest.
Yeah. And okay. And so which logical argument would you say is the strongest argument for God?
To me, you know, I believe pretty close to Einstein. Like I said, I was a pantheist, so I was very close to Einstein. Like I said, he's just one variable. He's not like my absolute hero or anything like that, right? And he was, you know, savant autistic, so it was not exactly on the scale of normal. But I mean, that's pretty logical. He thought out of the box. So I really respected the statement about, you know, physics is beyond mankind. I'll just tell you one of my thoughts. Dark energy, dark matter takes up takes up like almost 86% of all space. Yet right now,
that's a great example. Yes.
And here's the crazy part. I'm going to tell you, it gets crazier, because right now the scientific field, which I'm part of, there's two equations. Without dark energy and dark matter, the expansion happens too fast. So it's slowing down the expansion. So without it, the equations are screwed. So if I may use that word. So they vigorously need it. You're going to probably rename these two variables. And I'm just telling you, they just named them. They're attributes that they had to tag to make sense of the matter. Right? Yeah. Without them, we can't, it screws up the whole cosmology timeline. My point, the crazy, and I'm going to say this from both a theist and both a scientific analysis, is that mankind cannot physically prove it because there's no apparatus that can actually detect it. It emits it doesn't interact with light.
Just going to ask you about that. Yeah. So how do we know it's there? Like, from your science, you put on your science hat if you could for me. And did you
like
kind
the Higgs? Are you familiar with the Higgs? They knew. Go ahead.
Surface familiar. Yeah. Kind of familiar. Yeah.
The Higgs theory.
It's the thing that spins around atoms, right?
Correct.
It spins around the giant thing. Okay. And they do it at like really fast speeds and things change, right?
Yeah.
The properties of the atoms change, and then they studied that. That's my high level understanding.
Right?
Okay.
You heard of CERN, right?
CERN, yes. CERN, Higgs boson, all that, yeah.
Exactly. So the boson, right, which is a scientist at the time, he calculated the math he knew the math. The math was sound, right? And that's what they call constant. That's what they call classical physics, right? It's definitive, meaning absolute truth. So he knew the math made sense, but he physically couldn't prove it. And then finally, after so many years and billions of crazy amount of money, CERN proved that the Higgs, field did exist. So that was a rare occasion where somebody took a mathematic calculation and then later it was a huge bet, and it proved it true. And right now, that's kind of what they're trying to do with dark energy and dark matter, because we literally cannot detect it, which is crazy.
Can't see it, can't detect it. Yeah, it's totally invisible, right? If I understand it correctly, I'm sorry to cut in, but if I understand it correctly, it was detected by the mathematical equations they were doing, and the equations revealed that there was something else out there. That's just kind of like my high level, I'm slow understanding of what that means. Is that about right? Is that about accurate?
Weak and strong gravity, right? There's weak and strong.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we have two more variables, and all three of these variables act together to think of it like a string. If you hit a guitar and they are in harmony, they hit the same thing. And so that's why they're so vigorous. Like, I'm going to say this, it sounds weird, even in the science field, it's a little dogmatic, but they're kind of pulling the Bose scenario here, right? The Higgs, the Higgs, because this is the crazy part. You literally cannot physically prove it. I mean, that's crazy. You cannot prove it, but without it, it screws up the Big Bang timeline. It screws up gravity. It screws up, and that's why just like a
things get thrown off. Yeah.
Think about it. Most of the field, I'm gonna be honest with you, most of the field are they're atheist or agnostic, right? Most of them are agnostic rather than atheists.
Most of them, but there are some who are believers, like yourself, for example.
Yeah,
like you're in the science field.
Yeah, we're rare, but it's becoming more common. But I only use this analogy to you because it says a lot, because there can be dogmatic expressions even in science. And believe me, there's a lot of dogmatic. Look, and I'm not disagreeing with you. There's so much dogmatic stuff in religion, and
I think there's dogmatic stuff in everything. I think I tend to agree with that, and so I understand that. Okay, so I do understand where you're going, and so that being the case, like if we're talking about things like dark matter, can't prove it, but it was discovered because, like, for example, I think of it as in terms of, because in calculus, there's the derivative and the antiderivative.
Yes.
And so somebody along the way, and I think the derivative was discovered first, and then somebody along the way thought, well, if there's a derivative, there must be an antiderivative, so let's do the math and find out. And then they found it. Yes. It was kind of like that. Yeah, it was kind of like that.
Engineered it, but it was a mirror.
Exactly. It was a mirror. There has to be the opposite. So if that's the case, then let's,
right?
Antimatter and matter. So if there's matter, there must be antimatter. So let's do the math and find out. And sure enough, the math worked, right? The math. And so I think that's where I'm going with this is that like if we take this back to, if we compare this to beliefs, right? Yeah. I think that's where I want to be. I want to make sure the maths. Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm doing here is from a scientist perspective, from a and not to say I'm some authority or I have, that I'm the decider.
I would call you pragmatic or critical thinking, which it's great. I mean, don't get me wrong.
That's exactly what I'm trying to do. And so when I ask them, so it's essentially me saying, people coming up to me saying, okay, here's the answer to this equation. It's a pretty complicated equation. Does God exist, right? Let's just say it's a complicated equation. Yeah. And then they say, here's the answer. And I'm just saying, it's just like when you took a math test and you just wrote the answer, but then the teacher would say, no, you got to show your work. That's all I'm doing. Is just because I just want to know how to solve the equation. That's it. That's all I want to know. And so that's why I'm asking people, take me through your steps, because I want to solve this equation too, because, because I'd like to know. I'm curious.
If I may say, when I took this call, and I appreciate it as it is, and I appreciate you being, I think you truly are agnostic rather than, even though you're saying you're atheistic. Look, I'm going to say something. There's a difference between atheistics and agnostics. And then you have atheist agnostics, which is, I'm going to be honest with you.
That's technically what I am. I call myself an agnostic atheist. Yeah.
Got you.
Because I don't know for sure. Exactly. I can't ever say for sure. So I'm not going to say that. And I go, I go round and round with atheists all the time on this. Like there's atheists that try to put me up, take me behind the woodshed and say, how could you say that? And they're throwing all their stuff at me.
See, that's the thing. There's ground zero, meaning the burden of proof on God, the existence of God and the existence of non-God is plus and minus zero, right? It's like engineering. We call it zero state, right? There's a plus and minus. And that's why I say, I suspect during this conversation, my goal was not to prove, I can't, in one conversation, who am I? I can't convince you of God.
Yeah, and you said as much in the beginning. You did say that in the beginning, But then the other side of it is I'm not here to tell you, prove it to me. That's the other thing. I don't hold that position either.
Okay, tell me if this is logical. Look at my point is this. 86% or 80, it's actually 85% of the world's population are the atheistic, right? If you look at the atheistic states, obviously it's going to be Russia, China, and North Korea, right? Obviously because of what it is. And here in the United States, atheism is not even in its teens. It's a small fraction of a fraction of society. Small. Now, I only say this not because, majority wins, right? I'm just saying this. It's like, and my conclusion again is Einstein. He drew his own conclusion. There's Spinoza, right? Another pantheist. I can go through some of the alchemists who believed in a higher power, or I can talk about the Gnostics, right? These guys mix science, mysticism, which I don't. By the way, I don't believe in mysticism. I believe it exists. I just don't want to go there.
Yeah.
My point is, there's all sorts. I respect people like, Socrates, science, philosophy. The thing about philosophy, and that's why I'm going to use the word definitive, and I use it a lot because some things are definitive, meaning we can use absolute fact, our truth, established truth, and then some stuff is just theoretical. So to me, the Big Bang in itself, even though we somewhat can prove the timeline, we don't know exactly the Big Bang or what was before it. Even with, if I talk about evolution again, micro versus macro evolution, right? So I'm a thinker. I've had my fair share of schooling, as I told you. So I'm, but I'm not here to be a complete dogmatic. And, and I can tell you this, sometimes you have dogmatic atheists and sometimes you have dogmatic so-called Christians, right? So they're just like, you don't believe in God, blah, 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 blah. And that's not me at all. But with that said, hopefully I made sense to you, but
that makes sense.
Go ahead. That was pretty much the gist of my summary, I guess.
Okay, I got you. Let me ask you one more question, because this has been a good talk, but let me ask you one more question, and I want to give other people a chance, because I got a lot of people in my queue, but let me ask you this. One question before you go. It's kind of a two-parter, but I'm assuming the first part is a yes for you. So first part is, in your belief system, do you believe that you should obey God? And if so, if yes, why ought anyone obey God? True.
I'm going to say this is going to sound really strange. I believe within our free will, or rather, I'm going to use the word free choice, right? Right, because I don't believe there's absolute free will. I believe there's relative free will. That's a scientific statement rather than a theological statement.
Interesting. Okay.
So, and I could talk about Adam and Eve in the beginning. Satan decided to rebel. Did he allow him? Eve decided to make her own choice. And then Adam. Anyway, I won't go there. It's too crazy right now.
Sure.
But to the question again, can you restate it? Sorry, just look at me.
Yeah. I'll restate the second part because I'm kind of assuming the first part, but I'll ask anyway. So the first part is, in your belief system, do you feel obligated to obey God?
Yeah. Okay. That's exactly right. Okay. It was correct.
And then the second part is why ought anyone obey God? So I guess second question is why.
True. Okay. I'm going to state it in this manner. For myself, the obligation of man is to make his own decision and that's our obligation. That's to the individual. Now, to convince somebody else, you better be right, because this is life and death. So my point is, but you have to understand the first century Christians, that was their obligation, sent out in two, and that's what they did. But my point is, I'm not here dogmatically to tell somebody else to follow it. That is going to be their own decision, their own free will.
I agree with that. Yeah, I got that sense from you. I agree.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
respectful just for human dignity, humanity in general. But I mean, they have to come to their own conclusion, really. Isn't that the case?
Right.
And
Right.
so some of these people that get angry and I'm gonna be honest with you, like I said, you heard me say, I don't believe in mainstream religion. When they say it's horrible, I'm gonna say it. When they say burn in hell to people and I hear it, it's like, I shake my head drops and like, that should never be said like in that manner. That's horrible. Right. I mean, so, I mean, the first century Christians didn't really do that, right? I mean, it's modern Christianity that if I start getting into I'm not talking politics, but the first century Christians never took up arm. Only 100 years later, okay, the so-called Christians register for war. The first century Christians were martyrs. They never picked up arms. They didn't believe in arms. They were martyrs. There's no warrior Christian. There's no Rambo Christian. It didn't exist. That's a mythology from the South. That's the 21st century South imaginary rebirth of whatever, like Gnostics, right? They repackaged Christianity. Sorry, I know I'm getting weird in studies here, but
no, you're good. You're good. Okay. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. So thank you for providing that. I'd like to invite you back, if that's okay. Yeah, because A, I enjoyed the conversation, and B, you brought up something really, really interesting right at the very end when I said, I want to move on to someone else. So what I'd like to pick it up at is this concept of relative free will versus free choice. Yeah. I thought that was really, really, and I'd love to explore that with you if you want to.
I've done extensive research. I'll talk to you because there's neurological. They say that your brain reacts milliseconds prior, but I have many studies in terms of computers, right? A computer has peripherals. You can't take the hard drive away from the RAM, from the processing center, and the totality of a computer makes up who we are. So our subconscious conscious are thinking. So when they say, right now, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know if you studied it in the last 2 years, they said, well, right before you make a decision, your mind's already reacting, making the decision for you. It's like, this is like a computer. Don't justify that free will doesn't exist because a computer is going to react at one processor before it passes it. It's both sequential, a serial meaning, and it's both concurrent, meaning both at the same time. And anyway, it's another topic. I'm sorry, I'll stop.
No, you're good. And maybe if we have time, we can dive into that too, because there's something I want to run by you about that. But I'll save that for the next conversation because I'm afraid I'm so tempted to get into it, but I think you and I will be here for probably another 3 hours.
No
and so I don't want to disrespect the ones who were waiting. So,
sure.
But this was a great combo. So I really, really appreciate you coming up and talking with me about it. And
all right, my friend, thank you.
I enjoyed it. Me. Yeah. So I hope to see you soon, Dark Man. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay.
Right on, man. Take care.
Day. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
All right, that was really interesting. Oh, let me answer a question in the chat that I saw. Chosen Master, why are you as an atheist compelled to understand religion? Well, I think I understand religion. What I'm here is to understand beliefs. So that's what I'm compelled. And it's out of curiosity. It's fascinating to me why people believe what they believe and how they figured out it's true. It's very fascinating to me. You know, we have these 5 reasons that I've kind of pinpointed out of the hundreds of talks that I've done, that these 5 reasons that people hold their beliefs. And when I see these and people use the same 5 reasons, and maybe I'm missing something. So if anyone in chat has an idea that maybe I missed something, but they use these same 5 beliefs and then they come to completely different conclusions. And that's extremely fascinating to me. Like, why? How does that happen? Because if all this is true and they're adamant and so confident this is true, but you have adamant and confident, 100% confident Hindus, you have adamant and confident Buddhists, you have adamant and confident Christians, and adamant and confident Muslims. All 5 of you can't be right. So there's only one truth, right? So it's fascinating. Same 5 tools, same 5 reasons, many, 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 many different conclusions. And then we don't even talk about the sects, SECTS, and the denominations, within these different religions. There's disagreements all the time. And so that's the part that fascinates me. So just to answer your question, Chosen Master. All right, one more, and then I got to get back to work. So thank you all for waiting so patiently. Okay, Dean the dude, how you doing, man?
Hey, you
My
remember me?
guy. Yes, I remember you. I remember you. How are you doing? Man, you
I'm
came into my
honored.
live.
I'm
I'm honored.
honored.
I'm honored. I'm honored the same. The fact that you came into my live, when I was in your live a few weeks ago. So chat,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is well, now I consider, I would say at minimum he was esteemed colleague, a co-creator, but now I consider you a friend because you came into my life. So welcome. Thank you.
Hey, I
Thank you
appreciate
for
that. I
coming in.
appreciate that. Yeah, now
Yeah.
I'm on your turf.
Yeah. You know what? You were so accommodating and you treated me very respectfully. So I will do at least the same, if not better. So
Sure, I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
yes, you got it. You got it. Well, what brings you by, man?
Hey, yeah. So, well, I know we had discussed a number of different things when we were on
Yeah.
my line. You kind of know where I am, right? You know the Christian belief. You
Yeah.
kind of know my stance and all that
Christian
stuff.
guy.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm gonna go through all of that. Um, and what is your God belief? Basically that's it. But in a more general sense, well, if I scaled it back some, one is I believe that God exists, and secondly, I believe that, like the gentleman said before me, that I think there's only one truth. I mean, and I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that's mean saying. I think there's just one truth. Like there's only one way things happen, and there's only one truth. So I believe that there's only one truth.
Yeah.
I do believe that the God that I believe exists is a person, has a personality, is a person.
Mm.
So when I say a person, I mean that just like you or I wants to be called a certain name, wants respect in a certain way, has a preference about things. This is how I kind of want to be, called upon or recognized, or here's my preferences. This is how I lay it out. And I don't think that's a difficult concept. We're all
Yeah.
persons. We all have personalities. We all
Yeah.
have we all have preferences, and we all have a way that we want things done. If someone comes to us, if someone comes to your house, ring the doorbell at a decent hour in daylight time. Don't bang on my back door at 3 a.m. and expect a happy greeting.
Mm-hmm.
You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? Just because someone says, well, this is the way I want to do it, that you're obliged to say, I accept the way you do it.
Yeah.
If I have a personality, I'm a person, I have a preference about things. So I would expect, if I believe that this God exists and I believe that that God has a personality or is a person or has preferences, that, yeah, he has preferences. So if I'm saying I believe in this set of preferences that I believe he laid out,
Yeah.
then I don't feel, sometimes when people ask me about, do I believe in God and do I believe in the Christian God, and how can you believe, how isn't it offensive to other beliefs to say that you believe yours is true? I don't necessarily say it's offensive, because if just like anyone would ask me, well, what's your name? And I tell them my name is Anthony or Dean, and they say, well, I want to call you John. It's unfair that I can't call you John. Like, no, this is
Mm-hmm.
reference. I don't think that's a terrible concept.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree with that. Yeah. Yeah.
right.
I'm with you so
So
far. Yes.
yeah. So that's my general sense of my God belief and that construct of it. Right. So I do believe in Christian God because some personal experience, some testimony from others,
Mm-hmm.
scripture, history. It's kind of a bunch of things for me. So
Yeah.
it's it's the Bible, it's teachings, it's my personal experience, it's how I feel when I pray or when I'm
Mm-hmm.
amongst other believers,
Mm-hmm.
um, how faith helps me in difficult situations, brings me peace, gives me hope for the future, helps keep me grounded and humble,
Yeah.
helps me to realize that things are not the whole end of the world. Possessions and things are very much the least of what life means.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to have great things, but the real meaning of life is really how you treat one another in your relationships.
Yeah.
That's
I
the
I agree with all
real
that. Yes.
crux of meaning of life. Like the things and the possessions and all that stuff, just like how Solomon said, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. When he talked about how he owned all this stuff, he had the best of everything, and it was vanity. It doesn't mean anything. And the conclusion of it all was, it's just great for a man to work, to eat, and to have and spend time with his family. That's the meaning of life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's part of that. It's personal testimony of other people. It's deliverance and things that they've experienced and prayers of people that I respect. NDEs and things that I've read about people who have gone to the other side, who were not believers, who were not Christian, who were not whatever, had other beliefs and had an experience, and very, very vividly, very, very, and say, no, I'm a believer.
Yeah.
I take all that information and I take all those things in my life. It boosts my faith. It boosts my confidence, if you will, in what I believe. That's one thing. And then secondly, sometimes having discussions with atheists almost makes me feel like faith is it's almost like you're dumb. Like, how can you have faith in this? Like, it's silly. It's almost like I'm being very, very irrational. And
see, honestly, I would never say that. Honestly, I wouldn't say that, because I understand.
I've been made to feel that way.
I'm sorry about that. I think that's reductive and demeaning, honestly. And
but
I don't agree with that. It's reductive.
It's just kind of like this thing of, these believers, faith was just something that ancients used because they didn't understand things. And now that we know things, we don't have a need for that anymore. That's simply the point. That because we know these things now, we really don't have a need to believe in it's always the lightning, right? They were afraid of lightning back then. They didn't understand it, so they just called it God. But now that we understand lightning, we don't have a need to, think that God did that, right? So that whole thinking of all that line. But my thinking is, if one truly believes that we evolved, that we evolved over the ages, then we would have to say that faith is a product of that evolution. We would have to say that it is a natural part of our being to have faith. If we indeed evolved to be who we are, then you have to say we evolved to have faith. It's a natural part. Just like a natural attraction to the opposite sex, or a natural affinity to love a great view, a natural affinity to do art and music. That's a natural part of who we are. And so for me, faith is a natural part of who we are. It is not anything novel. It is not anything. Religion messed it up. Like a religion, of course, all of the tampering and trying to control people have definitely given it a bad name. But faith in and of itself, I think, is a natural part of who we are. I think we find the best parts of ourselves in faith. This is what I mean by
I see where you're coming from. Yeah, I understand what you mean.
Right. And this is what I mean by that. And I'm going to just get this thought out, and then we'll talk.
No, go ahead.
Nothing that we've made, anything that we as humans have created, have come from nothing. It has started with an idea in our mind. Can you prove that an idea exists? Is there any physical evidence that an idea exists?
Not until I write it down.
Anything whatsoever
or say it.
That you can see, touch, feel, anything of an idea. Nothing. But that ideas have probably had more influence over our world than anything. Ideas. You cannot see it, you cannot touch it, you cannot feel it. There's nothing,
Yeah.
but in our minds, we have come up with something that does not exist. And we said, by God, we're going to make this. I am going to figure it out. I'm going to produce it by faith. I know it doesn't exist. I know we've never seen it before, but we're going to go to the moon. Or I'm going to create a vehicle that's going to carry people. Or I'm going to create a device that communicates across the world, or whatever it may be. It didn't exist. There was no previous examples for us to say that it should exist, but yet our ideas made it exist. And so my thought of being a person of faith, to me, is totally legitimate. And I think we're natural. It's natural for us to believe. And I think it's more unnatural to not believe than it is to believe. Because I just think that that's how we operate. But go ahead.
Yeah. And I think I on a lot of levels, I agree with that. The interesting thing to me, Dean, is that if you ask 20 different people what faith means, at least from my experience, I'll get 20 different answers. And so that's the interesting part. And then there's, there might be a question of, well, what's belief versus faith? What's, confidence versus faith? What's trust versus faith? Et cetera. Right. Sometimes these terms are all used interchangeably. So, so if we just call it all faith, let's just say that. Let's just call it all faith, right? And I think you and I actually talked about this in your live. We kind of went back a little bit around on this, and so I think from that perspective, I think I heard you mention something very interesting, that your faith includes that something could not have come from nothing. Did I hear that right? Yeah. Based on what you're saying?
That.
Okay.
I would say that's part of my faith. Yeah, that's part of.
Yeah.
I think
now,
to add to that, I don't think order can come from disorder. I don't think you can. I think order demands a command and structure and purposeful influence. I just don't think order just comes from. It just all comes together.
Okay.
It just works because it works.
I got you.
I don't think that. I think
I got you.
Order comes from an intentional mind, or
I got you. Okay. So here's kind of how I take it from that perspective. Let's because you did bring up two things, but if it's okay, let's tackle the something can come from nothing first.
Yeah.
Because I do understand that line of thinking. I really, really do. I sincerely do. Now, from that perspective, when you say something can't come from nothing, so then is it then the conclusion that the something must have created it? Then the something must have been created, because if you can't, it just couldn't just materialize from nothing. Suddenly it's not there one day and then the next day it's there, or the next moment it's there. So and I just want to clarify, that's what you're saying, is that, hey, something can't come from nothing, so somebody must have done this. If God has a personality, that somebody must have been God. Got it. Okay.
Yes, right.
Okay.
So exactly. If people want to say matter and energy can only be transferred, or energy can only be transferred. I mean, what if God is the energy that can't be transferred?
What if? Yeah.
It's just God in the form of whatever he wants to make it to be.
And then to expand on that, if God has a personality, and it's because energy is just energy. It's not like energy by itself isn't intelligent. It's just a something, right? Whatever we want to designate that, but there's really no intelligence to it. So then when you're saying, hey, order can't come from chaos, so then that means that if energy is just a something and there's maybe chaos involved with that there has to be something that a defined order to that. So there has to be a purpose, right? Okay. And so in that,
because even just the fact that if you just take the Big Bang, there's still order that came from the Big Bang. It wasn't just, even if you just took everything that was in the universe as that real small ball, or however we define it,
Mm-hmm.
There's order in it, because how can you get you've got our entire solar system and our entire universe
Yeah.
with all this wonderful, it may seem like it's chaos, but it's really wonderful order. It really is.
Yeah.
How
Okay.
planets revolve around, stars and universes, and even though it's gases and all this stuff, there's a lot of order to it.
I got it.
So that we can make a theory of relativity, and we can apply physics and things like that, and gravitational pull, and we can apply all those things because it's almost like there's rules. There's rules there that say we can say a planet will be created because we know the rules. We can say this eventually this sun is not going to last because there's certain rules, or we know it burns certain, we have all these things because there's rules. And there's laws that come with it. And it's just to say that, where do the rules come from? Like, just to say that, well, maybe it always existed, or, we haven't gotten that far yet, or there's dark energy, and there's we know these things, but there's order to it. There's some type of, it keeps our universe intact.
I hear
much
that.
So that we can rely on it,
Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Let me do this, because I'm going to do what's called a steel man. I'll steel man what you're saying, and that really means to really like prop it up and make it solid, right? Not to say that what you're saying isn't solid, but to kind of add to it and really make it strong, right? Okay. Man of steel, right? So here's how I'm taking it from what you're saying. So if energy can neither be created nor destroyed, and that energy could be a creator, so then it would follow from what I hear you saying that God would neither be created nor cease to exist. That God is eternal. Okay, am I right so far? Okay.
Yeah.
And okay, so would this mean then that if God is can neither be created nor destroyed, and God was the somebody who was the catalyst that started all this, right? Started entire existence. Would it be fair to say that God was necessary for you and me to talk, basically? A lot of steps involved, but basically God was necessary, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's scripture talks about in him all things exist, or in him we move, we live, and we have our being. There's all those things that say that.
Okay. So he was necessary. Okay. And so then we can also say, because then I think about, okay, what would be the opposite of necessary? And in this case, you could say contingent, like, it was a condition. Like, for example, you and I are contingent or conditioned because we had to rely, and I'm going with what you're saying, we had to rely on a creator to be here. Something, like, and even if you take it from the atheist perspective, I had to rely on my parents to be here. So I'm contingent in that sense. And then they had to rely on their parents my grandparents to be here, and my great grandparents and all that. So I'm actually contingent all the way down my bloodline. But for my first set of great whatever grandparents, there had to be a necessary being to make sure that they were there. So they're contingent as well, right? There had to be a first. Okay, so we have that. So here's how I see it. Now you could say that, but for a ultimate being like God, I don't think the opposite is contingent. I think the opposite would be impossible. And here's what I mean by that. Either God is either necessary or God is impossible, because if God is the greatest possible being, then that means he's necessary. And so it's either that, or like I'm on the other side of you. And I'm not exactly saying this. I'm not saying God is impossible. But if we take the opposite of that and say, well, then if God exists, if God created all this, and I'll ask you, is it possible that there are, actually, would it be necessary then that if God created all possible worlds, like does that follow? Would that mean that God exists in all possible worlds?
Yeah, I guess worlds as we know it, yes.
Yeah, world as we know it. But even because if we're saying that God created all this,
or
other universes, other planets, other dimensions, yeah, just other worlds, whatever that means to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Safe to say that's true, right?
Understand it or comprehend it, but it could be.
Right. Okay. So this is how I think about it. So that means that God is either necessary or impossible because, and here's why. Because I think of it as the opposite, right? So and I try to use the same logic to see if there's an opposite to this. So then I think about impossibility. So here's how I think about it. Now let's just imagine for a moment all these worlds exist that you listed: dimensions, multiverses, universes, planets, worlds.
I believe that there's a heaven, right? So I guess I would. Believe that there's other dimensions or whatever.
We can include that in there. Yeah, let's just include that in there. Heaven, hell, all that, everything, limbo, purgatory, whatever you want to call it. All these different worlds. Okay, we'll throw it all in there. So let's just imagine, these all indeed exist. And, but let's just say that God didn't create these just for one moment. Let's just say, so in all of these possible worlds, is it possible, Dean, that there is at least one being who has knowledge that God does not exist? Is it possible? All these possible worlds, multiverses, dimensions, planets, heaven, hell, purgatory, limbo, all that. Is it possible? Because we're talking about an infinite number of possibilities.
I don't know if you can include heaven and hell on that one because I think they would know.
Yeah. Right? Okay. We can cross them off the list if you want.
May not want to include those two.
Okay. But let's cross them off the list, for example. Yeah. Well, but all the other possible worlds. Is it possible that there's at least one being on all these possible worlds that has knowledge that God does not exist? Is it possible?
When you say has knowledge that God does not exist, I'm kind of failing to understand what you mean.
What that means? Okay. It's in the same.
Do they believe that God does not exist, or are you saying they know indefinitely that God exists? Like
they know indefinitely that God does not exist. They know for a fact that God does not exist.
And then I guess my second part to that would be
how?
What would be the right? Yeah. What would
it be?
Basically, for me, that seems like the answer is, well, I cannot experience him in this physical or whatever form they are in.
Yeah.
We would say, well, I have no evidence in my form that this God exists.
And that's fair.
And that would be what they would say is the proof that the God does not exist, because in my material world or whatever it is, I don't have the proof in my.
It's hard to imagine as possible.
Whatever that is, my realm, I don't have that, proof, I guess.
That's fair. And so let me back up a little bit and we'll steel man the concept of God a little more. Now, just from what you gave me, I would say that the concept of God that you've laid out, that you've agreed to, that God can neither be created nor destroyed. So then God is eternal. I can't call that self-contradictory in and of itself, just using those properties all alone. I can't call that self-contradictory, nor can I call it absurd. Okay? I can't do that. Logically, it's neither absurd nor is it self-contradictory, because it is possible that there is a being that's eternal. It is possible that there's a being that can neither be created nor destroyed. Okay? I can say that. Now, would you agree with that? Would you agree with me on that?
Agree with you that it's possible?
That there is a being who exists that is eternal and can neither be created nor destroyed and is a creator. Like the three basic properties of God.
Possible.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Say that it's reasonable
At
even if we wouldn't
minimum, it's
necessarily
possible.
believe it, I would
Right.
say it's reasonable to say that it's possible. I would say
At
yes,
absolute minimum, yeah. And I want to qualify this because I don't want atheists yelling at me later that because it will happen. And I want to qualify it by saying it's just those three properties alone, not any other
Mhm.
logical conclusions or anything like that. Just those three properties alone. It's possible. A being exists that A can neither be created nor destroyed because we have energy, like you correctly pointed out. So if energy cannot be created nor destroyed, that means there is something else out there that can neither be created nor destroyed. Possibly. It's possible because we have a demonstration of it. So it's possible there's something else, or that could be the something else. The second thing is that eternal. Okay, it's possible that it's eternal because there are atheists who will argue, oh, the universe was eternal. There are atheists who will argue that. That's the case. If the universe is eternal, then it's possible something else or someone else can be eternal too. So those two make sense. Can't be contradicted, logically possible. And then the third one, a creator, because we have seen things create. Okay, so well, we didn't see our parents create us, but we know they created us. All right. I don't want to plant no images like that in your head. So forgive me, but we've seen that. So that means that logically that is possible. So it's neither absurd nor is it contradictory. Okay. So this is the way I look at it. Now let's give this creature, this being that I asked you about before, that has knowledge, that knows that God does not exist. Let's just call it the no-no, Knowno. Call it the no-no. All right? We'll just call them the no-no. Call them the no-no. So if you go by the same criteria that I put up, but just on the opposite side, can you really, and just the three characteristics that I gave, just the opposite characteristics, can you honestly tell me that is it either absurd or is it logically contradictory that this being does not exist?
I guess no.
Just the properties alone. Yeah, right. So that means it's possible. It may be extremely unlikely, right? But it's not impossible. It is possible, right?
It's possible that the being
and
does
it's just
not
one.
exist.
It's possible.
It's possible that the being does not exist in those three forms that you listed.
Yeah, it's possible the no-no exists if we take the same logic for God.
It's possible that no exists if you take the same three.
Or the same logic, because because if you look at the being and the attributes of the being, and all it is just a being. So it's sentient. It's a sentient being who has knowledge that God does not exist, who has this piece of knowledge. Whatever it is, it's on a flash drive, it's on a disk or whatever. It's in a book, whatever, on a piece of paper. Who cares what it is? But it's something, and we don't know exactly what it is. It's just that they have this knowledge. But can you say it's self-contradictory? Just by the properties alone, not compared to God.
Here's the conundrum. The being that says that they have knowledge that the God does not exist, that from the attributes that you gave. The being that says that it is knowledge that the God does not exist. If that being is subject to the God that does exist, right? I don't know if what that being knows is really what they know, right? I don't know if you could say that they have that, right?
That's a great point.
Because they're subject to it.
That's a great point.
You have to be outside of it to say, I know it does not exist. Almost.
Yes.
Right.
You've made a great point, because what you're saying is, how could the no-no and God exist at the same time if the no-no has knowledge that God doesn't exist? You've correctly pointed that out. That's exactly correct. I 100% agree with you on that. How is that possible? Right. So this is kind of what I'm getting at. And so what you have to look at then is you have to look at if the no-no is A, self-contradictory, or B, absurd. That's what you have to look at. So that's what we look at. Now, in the lens of, well, if God exists, of course it's absurd and self-contradictory, because God and this being can't exist at the same time. But you could look at it and say, well, if this being exists, then that makes God absurd and self-contradictory. Because if this being indeed does exist and knows God doesn't exist, then God can't exist, right? So it goes both ways. You see what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, it's kind of so the construct, sort of what you're saying, is very similar to when people say, "Can God create a rock that He cannot move?"
Yes, it's similar to that.
Basically, what you're doing is you're taking.
But there's two sides to that argument. Yeah,
right.
But I see where you're going.
Contradicting himself, right? So basically, you're putting God against Himself. That's what that means.
Yes, but in this case, I'm not. Yeah.
Move, basically, what you're saying is God going against Himself. God contradicting Himself. Because
not exactly. But go ahead. Go ahead.
Against Himself,
right.
Like if I said I built a rock that I couldn't move, I'm basically going against myself.
Yeah, and I'll explain how it's different. The reason it's different is you're right. In that scenario, if I said, yeah, either can God create a rock heavy enough that He can't lift, or if He created a burrito hot enough He couldn't eat, yes, I'm pitting God against Himself, right? Right? Yeah.
So to me, that's, you can't ask that question. As far
you can't. Yeah. And there's an argument for it not being logical versus it could be logical. It just depends where you land on that. Now, I'm not saying that, and here's why it's different. The reason it's different is because if you take the notion, if you assume God doesn't exist, that means there is at least one being who knows God doesn't exist, right? If you assume God exists, then that means no beings know God exists. Does that make sense? So that's why I'm saying
I'm losing you.
It's the opposite. Okay, if God indeed does exist, then that can't mean that it cannot mean that there's at least one being who knows God does not exist, right? If God does exist, it's not possible, right? So then that means the opposite is true. If God doesn't exist, there's at least one being in all the worlds that knows God does not exist.
Okay.
So are you saying, you see how that makes sense?
All right. I can follow you.
Yeah. And so that's all I'm saying. So then that means that the no is not self-contradictory and it's not a logical absurdity. Okay. Right. Because if you make an assumption, then it fits, it's logical. And then also if you make the assumption that God exists, that means that God is not absurd nor self-contradictory. God itself, God Himself. So that's all I'm saying is so that's what I mean by the opposite.
Okay.
So that's what I mean by either God is necessary or impossible. Okay. And so so that now it's making sense, right? Am I making sense now? You following me? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is what I mean. So if there is one, at least if you agree with me that the no is logically possible, because that's what I'm getting at. If you believe that the no is logically possible, then you can conclude then God doesn't exist in any of these worlds, because how could God have created all this if God does not exist, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you could say, if God does exist, God created all these worlds, then the no can't possibly exist. Can't. Right. It's impossible. Right. So that's why I'm saying the two opposites are possible.
Right. Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So now the next question is, well, how do you determine it? How do you prove it? And you can't. Either way, you can't. You can't prove that there's a no out there. You can't prove it. And by the same token, you can't absolutely prove there's a no out there, and you can't absolutely prove God exists. Absolutely. There's just because if you could, that means that we would all know God exists. We would all believe the same things. Like you and I would believe the same thing, and there would be no discussion here, right? There would just except maybe the discussion would be about God existing. Like it'd just be, that would be it.
Here's an interesting notion.
Yeah.
Here's a very interesting notion.
All right.
Doesn't that mean it all boils down to choice?
Ooh, that's a good question. And I don't believe so. And here's why. Because I'll ask you, I don't think I can choose to not to believe in God, because I didn't get here by choice. I don't believe I did. Could you honestly say that you could just choose not to believe in God right now? based on everything that you know and experienced, everything?
I think
Could you just
choices. I think we make choices. So here's what I'm going to try to explain it.
Yeah.
I don't think I agree with you as far as, I think this is where we had a discussion between faith and belief.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you believe in things. If I were to, if a ball were to come through my front window, and for me
Right.
to say I don't believe a ball came through my window, like like you
Right.
saw,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? It's not a choice. Like I didn't choose to believe,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? So in that, I agree with you. Like you don't necessarily choose to believe something, right? I do believe that you do choose to trust. I don't think you can trust anyone you want, and if you not trust, and someone could tell you that they're telling, and people could say, "Trust me, man. I'm telling you the absolute truth." You still may not believe them. Some people may.
Yes.
Some people may not.
Yes.
And one day you might.
Yes.
And one day you
I see
may
where
not.
you're going.
But you have a choice to believe it. Like you have a notion, or you may have a feeling about it. You may have a strong feeling about it. You may have a great opinion about it. You may be awestruck about it. Or you may be like, it might be right. But you make a choice on that. And that's, I think, where we fall in faith. I really do. I think we have stronger notions than other times. And I think things happen to us that really speak to us, that really minister to us, that really has an impact. And we say, you know what? I know God exists. You know, I'm just gonna, you know what? It's coming together for me. There's a lot of people where that's happened. And then for some people, they may not have necessarily had a miracle, but they just had a strong notion that, man, this thing is right. Like I believe it. I'm taking it. I'm taking it at its word. Now, I'm sure you would say then, well, what's the difference between Christianity and every other religion if that's the case? And that's true. Like I can't tell you why someone may believe one thing or another. I can't tell you that. Some of it's culture, some of it's experience. They have experience. Some of it's how you grew up. Some of it's what you heard and resonated with you at the time. And then some, you know, I'd be wrong to try to say what someone should or shouldn't. I do know, you know, there are people that have started one way and have changed. I know that there's atheists that were very ardent, very adamant about what they believe in, what their stance was with atheism, and something happened in their lives and they believe in God. And I know that there's people that started out who grew up in Christianity and are deconstructing and say, I can't get with this stuff. And then there's some Muslims that start a Muslim and they say, you know what, I met Jesus Christ in my life and I know he's real and I'm changing over. And they faced all kind of scrutiny because of it, but they said, you know what? And then there's other people that have gone the other way. It's very, very tough to say that. And it is a conundrum, and it is very difficult in saying, well, if God wants us to know who he is, why is it so hard? Why is this so difficult? And the only thing I can say to that is that from the beginning, the whole thing is I'm playing hands off so you can make the decision for yourself. That's the only thing. And people call it free will, or like the other person said, I don't believe in absolute free will. I believe in freedom of choice. And, there's that whole thing. But going along with the narrative of the Bible or scripture, going along with that narrative, the narrative is I'm going to give this will or this freedom of choice to you. And if there's anything that I'm going to do, it's going to be through you. And if there's anything I'm going to do on the earth, I'm going to speak to somebody and they, this, or I'm going to, but it's this whole thing of God honoring people's choice. And so that's why I came back to maybe it's all choice. Maybe that's the whole reason for it is.
I got you. Because
taking it from where I started with you is when we started the conversation is, but I think we are beings of faith. It's natural for us to have faith. I don't think it's unnatural. I think it's natural.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I think that's one thing that, if I could say, one thing that God gave us is this ability to believe in things that we don't see, things that don't exist, and things that we have a vision for, and then we believe it, and then it's something out of nothing. It's the kind of thing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And that for me is a very telltale sign of part of who we are as our genetic makeup. Who we are as our makeup of these beings that believe, and these beings that believe in something that we don't see, and can believe things that maybe we don't see physically, but we sense it in our spirit or our vision, or that thing in us, our mind, or however you want to say it, our intuition.
Yeah.
We have this ability, we have this thing in us that we can see things without it existing, and then bringing it forth and believing things that don't exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And from that notion of us being able to believe things that don't exist, that was one of the indicators for me of why I believe that there's a God, for the mere fact that we have the ability to believe things.
I got you. Yeah, I got you. Okay. Let me take you through a thought experiment, if I may, if you can indulge me for a sec. And then I can, and maybe this will demonstrate what I mean by I didn't choose this belief. So I used to have a caption in my live, like before you joined, it used to say, I have an invisible dragon. And I think today I changed it to my sister resurrected yesterday or something like that.
I know about the visual dragon. Yeah, tell me about the dragon that stays in your house. The fire-breathing dragon. Go ahead.
Dave. Yeah, let's talk about Dave for a second. So, all right. So have you heard me say all my evidence for why Dave exists?
Yes, I have, but you can run through it. You can run through it.
Okay. Well, I'll keep it very short since you're familiar with it, but just maybe for the chat. So Dave, I got this 3rd-degree burn on my leg, and I've shown other people in my life. So, and if you want to see it, I can show it to you. So I've got physical evidence of that. And the reason is that it is localized to this one part of my thigh, so that it couldn't have been like, I couldn't have, for example, fallen in the fireplace, because there probably would have been something else. There would be burns elsewhere on my body. There'd be scars elsewhere. So it's just this one spot, indicating that it was done deliberately. My mother and my sister witnessed a flame mysteriously appear in midair and just burn me right on the leg, like it was aiming for my leg. All right, they witnessed this, and I was raised believing that dragons existed, and they told me, yeah, dragons exist because one burned you, Dave burned you, and I read all kinds of books about dragons, different, and it ranged from stories to actual like scientific novels or scientific books to scientific publications to dragons are in the Bible. There's one in Revelation. There's a dragon there. There's another one that's talked about in the Quran. There's one talked about there. There's dragons talked about in Hinduism. If you go to a Chinese New Year party, you're going to see a dragon. You're going to see one in costume. So it's in just about every civilization. Egyptians believed in them, Romans believed in them, everybody did. Greeks believed in them. You just go on down the line. So there's just plenty of historical evidence supporting the existence of dragons. And then finally, I am confident that this dragon exists. I believe this dragon exists. So there's faith. Now, based on everything I've told you, do you believe me?
I would be inclined to believe you.
Inclined. Okay. Now, what does that mean?
Inclined to believe you, but there's a couple things, right?
Yeah.
And I do this for myself, so I'm not putting anything on you that I don't do for myself.
Oh man, you're so nice. You're such a nice guy. I love this. I love it. You're so diplomatic and nice and genuine, and I love it. Wholesome. Just wholesome. So I love it. I love it.
So the fire-breathing dragon that's in your home, I would be inclined to believe you. If there's a few things, right? Let's say
Thanks for the join my team.
Let's
Appreciate
say 5,000 people stopped by your house.
Okay.
While you weren't there,
Okay.
spent an hour in your home, and they felt and saw and got the same burn that you have from this fire-breathing dragon.
Okay.
Now, it's not the whole world. Half of them didn't experience something, but 2,500 of them swear like, man, I went in that. I didn't
Brother's
believe
got
it
a
at
dragon.
first. I didn't believe it at first.
Yeah.
I didn't believe it at first, but my life changed, right?
Okay.
And I'll show you this burn I got. And, you know, and then people randomly may stop by, and there's people that they go in and, oh my gosh, he's telling the truth. It really, and I have no reason to lie to you guys. Like I got a family, I got jobs, I got a reputation, and I'm not going around talking about fire breathing dragons. But heck, when I went in there, something happened to me. I'd be inclined to believe you.
Okay. Okay.
There might be something to that story. There really might be something to that story. Now, here's the gotcha. The gotcha is, am I really going to believe that it's a dragon? Or am I going to believe, hey, maybe there's something spiritually that's going on in that home? Maybe a demonic presence. Maybe something to distract people from God. Maybe there's something very evil or sinister. There's a lot of things in the spiritual realm that happen that are in Scripture. There are, we know, you know, devils threw people on the ground in Jesus' day where they were in torment, like coming out. We know that there's plenty of spiritual things that happen. There's all kinds of, you know, things and witchcraft and divination and all things that talk about spiritual wickedness in high places. And we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities and rulers of darkness of this world. Like, so I may be inclined to say, he might be telling the truth. There's something going on in that house, but do I believe it's a dragon?
Is it a dragon? Great point.
I believe that it's something that maybe it's really some spiritual things going on in there.
Great point.
That may be where I stand on it.
Yeah. That's a great point. That's a great point. Okay.
Because if I believe in this spiritual realm, which I believe in the spiritual realm, and I believe that there's a lot of things going on in the spiritual world, things that we probably don't even know. And I believe that there's people that practice all kinds of things that we don't know and do all kinds of things that we probably would be pretty taken aback by some of the things that go on. I would. That's where I would probably land on that.
Okay, I see where you're going, and I understand. Yeah. So I totally understand where you're coming from. So then my next question to you would be, of course, what would it take for you to believe that it indeed is a dragon and not these other things?
I guess I would just have to experience it for myself.
Okay. All right.
I guess I would have to experience it for myself. And even then, I would have to say, am I being deceived?
Yeah.
Because of what I believe I know.
Okay.
It's like, you know your mom better than anyone. And if someone says, hey, your mom's a real mean person, and you're like, I don't know her. She's not mean. I grew up, I know her.
Right.
Like, you know, and then you go and one evening you talk to her and she talks really mean to you. You would probably say, that's not my mom. Something's going on. You would probably say, maybe it's dementia. Maybe she's taken a drug or mixed drugs that she wasn't supposed to. But I know my mom.
Drugs are bad, by the way. I got restricted the other day to talk about drugs. So I just got to say, drugs are bad. Don't take drugs. Not a good thing to do.
And congratulations too. I heard you were talking to the previous guest and your sobriety.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations to you, man.
That's
a great achievement. It really is.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm very, very happy for you. Very happy for you.
Yes. Thank you. Appreciate that.
So yeah, that's kind of where I would land on that too. Is like,
okay,
am I being deceived? Because this is what I know. And then is this
Yeah.
something that maybe I didn't know, or maybe I didn't realize, or because I know what I'm in, or I'm really strong in what I believe and what I know.
Yeah.
And then to see something that maybe I don't know, maybe I had need to put that into context of what I do know. Now, is it right or wrong?
Okay.
I can't tell you. I'm just saying that's how I might land on that.
And I'm with you on all that. I totally agree. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
So based on everything you've said, Dean, could you honestly say, just based on everything you said, you've laid it out very well, very, very well said. So based on everything you said, could you honestly choose to believe that a dragon lives in my house? Like, just based on everything you said, because you took me through your entire thought process. Like, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. I would have to experience it for myself. So just from where you stand right now, could you honestly choose to believe it and then actually believe it? That's the other part of it. Because if you choose to believe something, then you have to actually believe it. Because if you just choose to believe, yeah, I believe trust. There's a dragon, but would you actually believe it? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Yeah.
That's a real good question. To be honest, I would say it's possible. I wouldn't say it's impossible.
Right.
Would it take a lot for me to lean that way? Yes, it would. But it's not impossible.
Right.
If I saw a dragon, if I was in your home and I really saw a dragon fire breathing, and I saw it, saw the scales, saw the legs and the nails and whatever, like the Shrek dragon, right?
Yeah.
And I saw that thing sitting there. Oh yeah, I would believe it.
Okay.
I would say I ain't going back over there.
I just had a funny visual about that you saw the Shrek dragon just chilling in my living room, and you're like, I'm out, trust, later. see me at B Dubs. I ain't staying here. I gotta go.
I sure would. I would be like, you know what? There's something that he said. He's true. He's telling the truth. He's telling the truth.
Yeah. Now, if you did see that, now let me ask you this: if you did see that, could you choose not to believe it? Like, you see the Shrek dragon just chilling there, just looking at you, maybe batting his beautiful eyelashes at you. You walk inside my house, it's batting his beautiful eyelashes at you. It's there, and you're and maybe you just do a 180 and walk right out the door. Let's just say that. But could you, at that moment, choose not to believe the dragon is there? And then actually believe it's not there.
No, I agree with you. No, I don't think you can choose not to believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, either you believe it or no.
Okay.
But I think,
I think
for the context of what we're talking about, if I knew you, I mean, we're good in TikTok buddies here, right?
Yes.
I mean, say we grew up together, and I know you, man. Like, you're a real good buddy. You're a real good buddy, right?
Yeah.
And you came to me and said, dude, I got something to seriously talk to you about, man. Bro, man, I'm not kid you not, man. Now, you know me. There's a dragon in my home, man. Here's this burn I got on my leg. You know I'm a logical person. I don't play about this stuff, man. There's something going on in my home. I saw this dragon, man. It was red, whatever. It blew this fire. Bro, it's real. It's real. Would I believe you? I probably would. Because I know the relationship I have with you, and I trust you enough that if you're telling me the truth, I would believe you. I'd say, you know what?
Believe me. Okay.
I believe you, man. I believe you. Like, you logical, you insane mind. You ain't been on them drugs.
Drugs are bad. Drugs are bad.
You wasn't high.
Disclaimer: drugs are bad. Yes.
I believe you that you were high when you said you were. Yo, bro, let me tell you. I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you the honestly truth. I would not lie to you, bro. I saw that. I would believe you. I would say, you know what? I trust that you don't have any reason to lie. You don't have any reason to make up a story. If anything, it'd be a detriment to you in our friendship, because why would you do something to, that would be, that would put our friendship on the line? I don't think that you would do that. So I would be inclined to believe it. I probably would believe you and say, man,
that all makes sense. Yeah.
really something. Now, if I go there and I spend 2 weeks and ain't nothing, I'm like, hey, bro, you might need to talk now. There's this doctor I know you might need to talk to.
Okay. All right. Let me add a little hot sauce to that to our meal here that we're cooking. All right. Let me add a little bit of spice to it. So what if you were chilling for 2 weeks here at my house? You just hung out with me for 2 weeks, and then you start noticing little things like, let's say you had a gold watch, right? And it was in the guest room on your nightstand. You left it there. You wake up one day, it's gone, and you're like, Truss, bruh, where my watch at? That was a watch my wife gave me. It's really important to me. Did you just take my watch, man? Come on. And I'm like, nah, man, Dave did it. Because you know how dragons are. They steal gold. They hoard gold, bro. I mean, we don't have any gold in our house. Look, and I take you into our bedroom. I show you my wife's jewelry box, and I'm like, do you see any gold here? Look, it's just all costume jewelry. It's silver. It's this, it's that. But you don't see any because Dave took it all. He took it because that's what he does. He hoards gold, and so we don't have anything in our house gold. And then you're like, man, okay, whatever. Okay, let's just say you're like, okay, whatever. You're cool like the Dean I know. You're just like, okay, whatever. All right, whatever. And then you walk around, you start seeing like little burn marks in the carpet, like little like someone been smoking and just throwing their coals right down on the floor, right? But you see just little pits everywhere, and you're like, what the heck is all this? All right. And I'm not telling you, it's Dave, man. I'm telling you, I never smoked a day in my life. You ever seen me fire up a butt? Have you ever seen me do? No, I never do that. Smoking's bad, by the way. Do not smoke. It's bad for you. So you never see me do that. And then other things like you feel just a breeze just come by you, just mysteriously, and you look, no windows are open, the AC's not on. Like, okay, so there's all these things that are going on. So you don't actually see it, but just these little clues everywhere. Now, does that raise or lower your confidence that I'm telling that I'm, does it, you know what I mean? Like,
I would say,
is it
would, here's what would raise my confidence or lower it. As if, bro, if this is really real, why are you still here? If this was really happening,
okay, you're taking,
like, yo, I'm getting up out of here, man.
You're taking the horror movie logic. You're taking the horror movie. Why are these fools still here?
If you're just still sitting there chilling and you're telling me all this stuff going on around you and stealing stuff and taking stuff and burn marks and you got burned and this, that, and the other, I'd be like, if you ain't scared or if you're not moving or if you don't think this is not normal or not good, I would be then inclined to think, I don't know if it's really this dragon. Maybe it's him, or maybe he's just out of his mind. Maybe he's out of his mind and he's doing it himself.
Yeah.
Because he's got some bigger issues. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
There would be, there's all this stuff that would go along with it. And it's that trust thing. Now, as a friend, I'd be like, bro, you might really, one of two things. You might really want to move because I care for you and this is not good. Or secondly, I would be like, bro, I think you really need to see somebody because this might be, you may not even realize what you're doing. Maybe you're doing something.
Right.
A lot of my concern for you, I'd probably be like, you, my friend, yo, I don't think you'd take my watch, but maybe there's an alternate ego that's doing this. That's not impossible. Or, if you're just chilling and this stuff is going on, something's wrong. Like, is normal person be like, yo, I'm up out of here. This is crazy. Especially if you're talking about physical harm, right?
Right.
So
I hear all that. Okay.
Now, I may very well believe you. I would just think that what goes along with that belief or that faith is right. It's like what Scripture says, right? Faith without works is dead, right? So, right. So if I'm actually believing you and trusting you as a person, and I'm trusting you in your word and what you're saying, but then I don't see the things lining up of what you're saying, right? I'm believing in confidence of what you said, but then if I'm not really seeing lining up with what you're saying, then yeah, my faith, if I'm not believing you, or if I said I believe you, but then I said, hey, trust, I ain't hanging out in your house, man. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Like, if I really trusted you, and I really believed you, but then, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't respond, then did I really believe you? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
exactly.
If I'm not really responding to what I told you, if I'm trusting you and I told you I believe you, I'm taking you at your word, but then my actions are not lining up with what I said, right?
Exactly.
Because
exactly.
if I fail to start feeling that you're trustworthy, then yeah, I would be like, I don't know. So relating that to faith and belief, yeah, that I guess if I'm believing in God and I'm, and not everything goes my way, right? And to any believer, not everything goes their way. And one might say, well, then if you're believing and trusting God and then things don't go your way, why would you keep on believing? And that's that's a good thing, right? Like a good question, right? That would be a good question.
Yeah.
And
so, yes, I agree.
So that's why I was like, there's a lot of things that contribute to my faith, I believe. There's a lot of things.
Pardon me, I got a cough.
Oh,
excuse me. So, and I think that's kind of where I'm going with this is if we're thinking it, all the reasons you laid out for not believing in Dave or kind of thinking your way through this, I'm doing the same thing with God. Right. So you see where I'm at now?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And maybe you've always seen that, but yeah. So that's what I mean.
What I've learned through these discussions, like, so I've asked a lot of the issue, what it really boils down to is evidence, right?
Yes.
A lot of it boils down to evidence. Like, how can you actually prove it, or where's the evidence of me to actually believe this thing? It's a fair question, right? It's fair. Like, what's the evidence? And I get it, right? I get that the evidence, what would be the evidence of God? And the only evidence that we can really say that would really be evidence, like the only thing that we could really define as evidence would have to be a physical form of evidence, right? It would have to be, and when we say evidence, the components of that evidence has to be something that's physical in nature, something that's probably repeatable, something that's measurable, and something that can be demonstrated over a certain, periods of time. Like it can be done, redone.
Right.
And so if we take evidence if we're defining evidence as just in physical form, it's a physical property that has to be repeated and it has to do these, and it has to take on these components, right? My only issue with that is if we had evidence that met all of this criteria, would we really attribute it to God? Or would we just say it's just a natural part of the way the earth works? Maybe we don't understand it yet, but it works every time. So we just got to figure out how it works. And then once we figure out how it works, we don't need the explanation of God because we already know how it works. Because that's what we do already.
Yeah.
We look at the nature, we look at physics, we look at photosynthesis, we look at life, we look at birth, we look at everything.
Yeah.
And we say, oh, we know how that works. So we don't attribute to God. So why would any evidence that we come up with be attributed to God if it took on the components of repeatability and measurability and physical? Like, we would just say it's something we tested and this is the way it happens. This is the way it works. I don't see where we would attribute it to God. Like, we would just say it's a part of natural works.
Yeah. And
so whenever someone asks for evidence and it's evidence in that form, even though they're saying I would believe God with this evidence, I don't know if we really would believe God with that type of evidence, because I think it would just be attributed to what we already do. We would just say, oh, we know how that works. Like,
Yeah.
that's just the
I
way
hear
it
what you're
is.
saying.
So it
Okay.
all really boils down to, in my opinion,
Yeah.
personal experience with God.
Personal experience
Or
at the end of the day.
just
Okay.
faith, just believing that what God has said, that we believe it. Like, I look at our brain and our immune system and ecosystems and water, and I look at that stuff and marvel and say, I think there's a creator behind it. Right? That's the evidence. Like, if I want repeatable and measurable, I've got repeatable and measurable. I've got the earth and everything, how it works. Like, I've got this minute, rare thing that happened, that life happened in the universe after 13 whatever billion years. Life happened. That's a minuscule chance. It's really impossible, honestly.
Yeah.
For all these components to come together for us to have life, and not only have life, but have consciousness, and not only have consciousness, but have morals, and not only have morals, but have faith. Like, you can't script it. Like, to me, I look at these things, and that's where I see it. So when people say evidence, I'm like, isn't what we already have evidence? It's just a matter of trusting and believing that it's been created.
I'm with you 100%. Yeah, with you 100%.
That's where it goes down for me.
Okay. Let me respond to that if I can.
Yeah.
So I think, because someone actually said this to me recently. They said, well, because he's a Muslim, and his belief is that God is not in the material world. Like, he's somewhere else. And so he said, so I can't produce a physical proof of God to you. I can't produce it. So we have to use these other reasons. And so it's a lot like what you're saying, a lot of it.
Yeah.
Very close to what you're saying. So then I ponder that. And so I haven't actually had a chance to ask him directly, but I thought of it like this. And I did say, okay, well then let's cross physical off the list of testable, repeatable evidence and verifiable evidence. So then I thought of the moon landings. The first time we were trying to land on the moon, late 60s, right? 67, 68, 69.
Yeah.
And so then I tried to imagine, okay, so the process that they use a series of calculations, mathematical calculations, and it was a bunch of engineers and scientists who verified all this. They did their own calculations, they tweaked it, they adjusted it, and they got it just right to demonstrate that we could land on the moon, people on the moon. And and so they didn't know they could do it until they actually did it, right? So we can accept. So we can say, there was either belief or faith, whichever one you want to use. They believed that they could do it. And so I'd agree with you when you're saying the way they demonstrated it and proved it was with personal experiences, right? Because they actually put dudes in the ship, in the rocket. They sent that rocket up in outer space, and they landed on the moon, and then they came back. They found a way to come back. So yes, that was a personal experience, but then they used faith as well. They used logical arguments and evidence, the mathematical equations. So now I imagine, Dean, what if they just use faith alone to send people to the moon? Like, didn't use any mathematical equations, didn't use logical arguments. Man, there'd probably be a lot of craters on that moon, right? So that's what I mean is like, but that's personal experience with faith. But then it follows that they probably eventually would have gotten it right, because they would have said, okay, well, first launch, that didn't work. See ya, Dave, Bill and Joe, nice knowing you. Yeah. Process elimination. Okay, let's tilt the rocket a little bit this way. All right. Okay. Steve and Tom, you're next. um, I think we can do it this time. We can do it. We got this. Yeah. So I think of it like that, like, oh, that's not a good way to do it.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, but I see what you're saying.
With a little, right?
It's a mix. It's a little bit of everything. Exactly. I hear that.
What I found, well, when I listened to testimonies of atheists that have become believers, and I see a lot on here. I've seen a few on here, and usually when they say something or when they give their testimony of what happened, it's really almost boils down to a personal experience, that something, in their life happens or God moves in some type of way, and it really speaks to their heart, because that's where it really is. It's really in your heart, in that part of you that it's not just all logical. So the only thing that I usually say, to an atheist, if they say, prove to me, give me evidence of God, I would my only response really would be ask God for a sign or something. Like,
okay,
ask God, say, you know what, God, if you're really real, and I'm saying seriously, if you're real, show me something. It may not be right now. It may not be some magical thing that happens, but somewhere in my life, show me something. Like, really speak to me, minister me, and my heart is open. Speak to me, and I believe it'll happen. I really do.
All right.
That's about the only evidence. That's about the only evidence that I could really give that would be worth something.
Could I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Okay. From an atheist to a Christian, here's a suggestion that can at least get them thinking. All right. And I'm like opening up the atheist playbook here. So atheists are gonna probably yell at me later, but that's all right. It's not a secret. It's all right. Because people say this to me a lot. They say to me, prove God doesn't exist. And I say from the jump, I can't prove it. The way you want me to, I can't prove it.
Right,
and so.
Oh, and one caveat I do want to add into that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know what I just told you is almost contradictory in nature.
Almost, but it's okay.
Because
no,
if
it's okay.
Saying, ask God to show himself, that's like almost already saying that God exists. So what I'm saying is I understand that it's kind of contradictory. I understand that. But I did want to add that in. Go ahead.
Yeah. And you know what? If that happened, that would be great. And I will sit here and tell you to just respond to that little piece. If that happened and God indeed revealed himself to me, not that he has to, not that he should, just if he did, that's all I'm saying. And again, it met my standard of evidence. Like I'm not delusional. I'm not sick. I'm not on drugs that are very, very bad for people to take. So do not do drugs. I'm telling y'all right now, bad. Drugs are bad. I got to say this disclaimer every time because I got in trouble with TikTok earlier. And I've ruled all those things out. And so it's legitimate to me. It's indeed legitimate. Then I would believe it right there. That would be it. It'd be done. You and I would cease tossing this back and forth. I'd be like, Dean, bro, I'm going to believe him now because this is what happened.
Well, hey,
like so
man before me, I would pray that for you. That would be my prayer for you. Is that somehow
I appreciate that.
In some way, God will reveal himself to you.
Right
and,
on,
and let it be done. Name of our Lord, let it be done. That's what
thank you, man. I appreciate that. And I sincerely hope that happens. Yeah, and I sincerely hope that happens. I sincerely hope that happens. So
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay. So let me so to respond to what you said before. The suggestion to talk to atheists. All right. So the first part is when I say it, I would say, yeah, you know what, you're right. I can't prove God the way you need me to prove him. Like I can't just produce him. Like I can't just hold up my hand and God's just standing there, or put my arm around bro or anything. Like I can't do that. However, at the same token, isn't it fair to say that you can't prove God doesn't exist as well? Isn't that fair to say? Like honestly, can you honestly say that? And if they're honest, and if they want to have an honest conversation with you, they'll say, yeah, that's true. And I say, okay. Now the next part of it is it possible that God could exist? Is it at all possible? Like, is the concept itself, like kind of like what I took you through the no, is the concept of God itself, is it possible that there could be a creator, that there could be this, that there could be that? And they're going to take you, well, if we talk about we talk about morality and we talk about all the things in the Bible. No. Just wipe all that away. Let's just pretend all that's not real. Let's just pretend. I'm just talking about a creator. I'm talking about a supernatural being. Is it possible at all? Even remotely, is it possible? And I will if they're being intellectually honest, honestly, if they're being intellectually honest, they cannot say, no, it's not possible, because that would make them an ideologue. And then that would make them just closed-minded and all that stuff. Like, just like how people were like that with, like, that'd make them dogmatic, right? And so then they're, and honest, I don't think they're being intellectually honest if they take that position. Like, there's just, I just can't, And so, so that would just be like, okay, and you can bring up tons of examples of things that, that you are true, or that you believe are true, but you can't prove that they're true. Like, for example, I can't prove to you, Dean, like if you said to me, hey, Trust, prove to me that you're not dreaming right now. I can't prove it to you. There's no way. Yeah. All I can, I can give you all the reasons why I think that, but I can't prove it to you,
Right.
So that's what I mean. It's like, you can think of all kinds of examples, prove that you're conscious, prove that, that you have ideas, prove this, prove that. You could do that all day. So, and then by the same vein, if you can't prove these things without a doubt, that means you can't prove God doesn't exist without a doubt. Just like I can't prove God exists without a doubt. So then we're left to what we believe at the end of the day. And so that's how I would approach it. And so, and honestly, like, I don't see you and me as very different at all. Like I think we think the same in a lot of ways. It's just, we happen to be on opposite sides. That's it.
That's
we just came to two different conclusions. Yeah. That's it.
Right. Yeah. And I agree with that statement. I agree with that statement. And it's, we both kind of, I think you said you grew up. Did you say you grew up Pentecostal?
I grew up Catholic, and I was going to go on. Yeah, my mom she goes to church every day. My mom she's 84 years old, still goes to church every day.
Every day?
Praise every day, without 7 days a week. And you think you devoted? You ain't met my mother. She goes to church every day. She prays for me every day.
I went to church a lot when I was coming up when we did Sunday and Sunday night prayer and Tuesday Bible study and Thursday rehearsal and Friday night service.
Every day. She's at church every day. Yeah. And so, and that's I remember that. Now, she didn't go to church every day when we were growing up because she had to take care of us. But once we left the house, she was going every day. But we were there, like for Easter, for example, we were at church every day, all of Easter Holy Week. We were there every day, and just sitting there, just chilling in church every day. And I remember that vividly. So yeah, devout Catholic.
God bless you,
and
God bless you.
So yeah, I got So to say I have someone praying for me who's devout, 100% believer, I mean, I'll put her belief up against anybody here. I was going to be in the seminary. She could not be happier that I was going to be a priest. And then when that fell through, she could not have been more disappointed. It just went the opposite direction. You know, so so that's kind of how I grew up. And so I don't mind people praying for me. I know there's some atheists out there be like, don't pray for me. You know, nah, man, it's okay. It's just a prayer. It's no big deal.
My mama the same way and gave me my first Bible and demands I read it to somebody.
So you know. So you know. Yes, sir. Yes, praying mamas, you know. So so let me do this, because I do have to salvage the rest of my work day. But
I know you gotta go, man.
Yeah. But let me ask you this and it'll give you the last word. And there may be some follow-up questions just depending on what you ask, but this will be my last question, maybe 2 or 3. Yeah. Why ought someone obey God?
If they want to do it.
If they want to, okay.
If they're, how can I say it? If they're convinced and they want to, then they ought to.
Okay. If they're convinced and if they think they should, then they ought to.
Correct. I think it's almost default. If you really believe, if you're a believer, if you really believe that, then you would by default. Like, so I guess my answer would be, if you're a believer, if you believe it and you take it seriously, it's like what they say, like faith without works is dead. So that's your faith. If that's what you believe and that's your faith, then you ought to. If that's not your faith, then it would be fruitless for you to do that. It would be frustrating for you to do that. It would probably push you more away than it would draw you if you did it without a heart and a desire to do it, because you would just be mad and like, why do I have to do this? And this is ridiculous and this doesn't make sense. And so that's what I would say. If it's your faith and that's what you want.
All right. Then. Interesting what you said. So follow-up question. Yeah. By default, are we obligated to obey God by default? Just being born, for example.
Are we obligated?
Yeah.
No, I mean, even that follows biblical narrative of freedom of choice or whatever, free will. It is, you are not obligated. It's something that God would want you to come to your own conclusion to do, at your own heart to do. That's the difference. It's about where your heart lies and what you want, what you want to do for yourself, rather than, if that's the case, he would have just we would all be in heaven right now. We would all be quote unquote robots or whatever it is. We would just be created beings that are created specifically and solely for just bowing down and worship. If that's sincere, I don't think so, because it's just, you're made to do it. You don't even have an option or a choice for anything else. So I don't think true friendship or adoration or love, or however you want to put it, I don't think true adoration can exist without the option of not. I don't think it's genuine. I don't think you can. I just don't think you can. I don't think you can truly have an honest and true love and relationship without the option to say I want it or I don't want it.
Interesting.
It's your heart and your desire that makes it real, that makes it true, that makes it honest. If you don't have it, how would you know it was really true or honest or not? It requires you to have, you have to have a choice for it to be really real. You have to have that option. And if you don't, then it's how is it genuine? And so if God makes a statement of God is love, and if you're purely love, then you have to love that being enough that you want to create. You have to love that being enough to say you have the option of not being here, of not
Mm.
fellowship with me. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
why you would, but if you really want true fellowship, I've got to give you the option to say no. I have
Yeah.
to give you the option
That
to
makes
say,
sense.
I don't want you,
That makes sense.
And
Yeah.
yeah, people, I mean, hell is awful. It's terrible. But really, that's just, I don't want any of your goodness. I don't want it. So what's the other option is to be without it. And if God is everything and all of the love, and then you take all the love out and all the goodness, and if God is all good and all loving and all that stuff, if that's the manifestation of real love and goodness and wonderfulness, and you don't want it, the opposite of all that is the absence of it all. That's the choice. Is it great? No, it certainly isn't. It seems really cruel, but at the same token, if we're going by the rules or the personal, here's God, and this is his preferences, and this is what he requires, I can't change the rules. I can't make it. I can only, have that choice of what I want to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
So
I see exactly what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. I see how you're saying. All right. Man, Dean, thank you so much this is a great conversation. This was like a part 2 of our first conversation, which was really, really good. And this was the part 2, and I loved it. I would like to have a part 3 because I like what you said about like free will, and I'd love to explore that with you sometime if you'd like to come back, or I come into your channel and chill with you or whatever. Yeah, I'd love to take that up. And then I'm going to ask everyone, follow Dean the Dude, man. He's good stuff. He's a good creator, and he's got good takes, good content. Follow him, man. Kick this man some follows. He deserves it.
I appreciate it.
I really, honestly, yeah, because I know there's some believers here in chat. You guys would really appreciate what he has to say. So he's, you're gonna want him to see. You're gonna want to see him on your For You page when he's live, and his content as well. So you guys will like that. Yeah, you definitely want to follow him. Yeah, absolutely, man.
I like to share a lot of content. I don't know. Sometimes I'll share like testimonies, like I was telling you about atheist testimonies and things. I do reshare that, but I don't know if it hits those who are following me or not. I don't know if it actually gets notified or not. But that's interesting content. If you ever come by, maybe I'll send you one or two. I don't like to send it right off because I don't want it to be like I'm assuming. I don't know. I don't want to be pretentious, about it. I'm gonna send this to him. Like I'm gonna get him.
This is it. This is the one, man.
Yeah, but now that we've had this conversation, I might share one or two things to
absolutely
further explain what I meant
by
what atheist or someone had gone through and how they changed because of an experience in that sense.
At me anytime. Yeah. At me anytime. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see them. And I think I may do the same. Like if I see something that reminds me of what we've talked about, I may at you too. So yeah. And it's not from a space of, hey, I'm gonna get Dean. I'm gonna pull him to the dark side. This is it right here. This will do it. No, it's nothing like that. It's just food for thought, something to discuss, something to talk about. I'm down. I'm down.
Was that Phil
Right
Red?
on, man.
Phil Red.
Yeah.
Lovely comment.
Billy Red.
It's been a great conversation.
I'm glad. Yes, likewise. I loved it. So thank you so much. And look, man, you chilling with me got me to 10,000 likes, over 10,000 likes.
Man, I was tapping that. I was tapping the button. I was tapping the
right on.
Button,
right on, man.
I got you a couple hundred in there. I know I hit a couple.
Thank you. Well, I look forward to doing the same back to you. So when I see you live next time, I'm gonna jump in, throw you some likes, maybe sit down and talk with you for a minute. When I come through. So I'd love to.
Yes, sir, bro.
Right on.
Sounds good.
Enjoy the rest of your day, Dean.
Say hey to Dave for me.
Will do. I'll let him know. All right, man. Take care.
All right, man. Yeah, later.
Yeah, all right. Later. So I love that conversation. Yeah, Dean's a good dude. So yes, I hope you guys liked that conversation. Thank you so much for all the likes, man. You guys threw me a lot of likes today. I think this is the highest likes I've ever gotten. I hit my goal on gifts, so I appreciate that. Appreciate the 50 cents you get down to me. I appreciate it. I'll probably go get a soda later with my daughter. Maybe I'll buy my daughter a soda with it. I don't even think you can get it for less than $1 at a soda machine, can you? I don't think so anymore. I haven't bought soda in a machine in a long time. So, but I appreciate you guys, man. This was really cool. Yeah. So for those who were waiting as guests, I do have to go. I got to do my day job, but follow me. And thank you, Philly Red. And you guys are all welcome back anytime. Even the ones who hate me, you're all welcome. And I will say that if you come back, I want to talk to each and every one of you who came in and requested a guest. I just only have so much time, unfortunately, and I went way over time. This was only supposed to be a lunchtime thing, but good conversation. So yes, same here, John 43. I can't wait to talk to you either. So I'm looking forward to it. And and I like being challenged. I like being anything but insulted and demeaned and anything like that. But if you got like the first guy I talked to, Derek Armstrong, he was like really challenging me and all. And for that matter, Dean challenged me too when Dark Matter challenged me. So I don't mind a challenge, but as long as it's respectful, and I'll do the same. So I respect everybody. But anyway, yeah, follow me if you want to be notified of me being on. Also, if you're on Discord, I do have a Discord link in my profile, so you're welcome to join. There are others who encompass all spectrum of faiths that are discussing stuff. So if you want to, bounce these things off people, I'm in there, also, and I'll talk and all that. So if you want to join the Discord, I'd love to have you and see you guys there. So you're more than welcome to do that. So we can take these conversations offline. And again, follow if you want to, see me and talk to me the next time I'm on. I'll talk to as many people as I can. So I wish you all the great rest of your day. I hope you enjoy it on this beautiful Wednesday, and I will see you tomorrow. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.